Chapter 944. You're not even going to ask me why? You definitely won't harm me. I can't make a decision. You know better than me. If you think it's time to take it, then take it. So infuriating. I've just come up with a whole bunch of reasons to convince you. Qin Guang snappily said, since I'm here to ask for your opinion, you help me decide. Why do you need to convince me? Lu Fei fiercely looked at him. You're really lazy. Qin Guang chuckled. This is not me being lazy. This is called knowing people well. If I don't have to use my brain, why do I have to be so tired? I have to spend my energy on other things. That's true. You're a great magister. You're a bureau chief. Oh, you're no longer one now. Don't you want to know why I suggested you take it? Also, there's actually another way to take it. Say it. Qin Guang didn't want to dampen her enthusiasm. Well, first of all, you also want this money, right? Although I don't know what you want, I always feel that your ability to spend money is as good as your ability to earn money. In fact, capital is like this. Forever relying on your own money to do business. That's the experience of the older generation. It's no longer applicable in this era. Capital has its advantages and disadvantages, but it's in line with the laws of the modern economy. In this matter, that Tang Xiaokai is the best among our younger generation. Then you don't want others to take advantage of you. Even if it's only 5% of the shares, you don't want to share your results with people you don't know in the future. After all, at that time maybe this 5% of the shares will be worth more. In addition, although you took the initiative to give up the bureau chief position, you're unhappy because of this matter. You also feel at ease taking the compensation they give you. In summary, whether it's for the development of the company or for your own comfort, you have to take this money. Qin Guang nodded. That's the reason. Lu Fei suddenly smiled wickedly. So this is the solution I came up with. 5% of the shares will be given to them, but not to the Tianguang agency that you and Tang Xiaokai are working with. Instead, you will set up another subsidiary of Tianguang agency. It will be financially independent from the current Tianguang agency, but the management will be like a parent and subsidiary company. The name will be Tianguang Culture. Tianguang Media is good at everything. On the one hand, if you let Rising Ocean Corporation invest in Tianguang brokerage, you'll be making money, and the company will have a large amount of cash flow. However, the 19% of shares that Tang Xiaokai occupies will appreciate too quickly and too easily. On the other hand, your foundation is Tianguang Agency. If you're unhappy in the future, you can turn Tianguang Culture or Tianguang Media into an empty shell. Tianguang Agency. Most people to say. Too ordinary. Ordinary. Not too. However, your situation is special. Tang Xiaokai will definitely not object. In fact, he doesn't care about the benefits of investing in you. As for Rising Sea, no matter how harsh your conditions are, it won't be a problem. Since he came to you, he must have accepted a mission. The people in Beijing only care about whether the money will be delivered to you in a reasonable manner. This way, the people in Beijing will be more satisfied. Rao Jinghai of Rising Sea has no choice. He will think of a way to explain to the other shareholders of Rising Sea. Even if he pays from his own pocket or seeks funding from others, he will find the money for you. Qin Guang's eyes gradually brightened. He asked, can the parent company and the subsidiary company be completely financially independent? Lu Fei raised her eyebrows. Of course. They're both independent legal entities. However, because of you, they added an agreement that temporarily allows the subsidiary company to be completely controlled by the parent company. Actually, they're two relatively independent entities. Actually, you can let Tianguang Agency control part of the subsidiary company. However, in principle, you and Tang Xiaokai would have to inject a certain amount of capital. It's meaningless. Instead, Tang Xiaokai would take advantage of you. I have another question. If I set up an empty subsidiary company and take 1 billion yuan from Rao Jinghai and only give him 5%, they'll still have to say something about it, right? Lu Fei rolled her eyes. Idiot. Can't you just buy some IP to put on a show? Besides, aren't you already the most popular IP in the country? You're so smart. It's enough to have a confidant in life. Why don't you help me? Lu Fei shook her head violently. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in your petty tricks. Qin Guang was angry that he was being looked down upon. However, on second thought, the person in front of him could buy a Porsche 918. She was a hidden tycoon with a family worth more than $10 billion. It seemed like this was just a petty trick to her. After dinner, Qin Guang and Lu Fei went their separate ways. It wasn't that they didn't have any ideas, but Lu Fei had to fly to the sea at night. She was busier than Qin Guang. When Rao Xinghai received Qin Guang's call, it was already past 8 at night. After hearing Qin Guang's request, Rao Xinghai felt that he had wasted half of his life doing business. You really have a big heart. You think you're losing out by buying 5% of your shares for 1 billion? Can you be a little more reasonable? I can't even get the shares of your parent company, yet you're setting up a wholly owned subsidiary company and giving me 5%? How can you be so shameless? How can you be so shameless? How can I explain this to the other shareholders of Rising Sea? Unfortunately, Qin Guang didn't seem interested in negotiating with him at all. In any case, this matter was settled. Can you handle it or accept it? Let's do it. If you can't handle it, I won't rely on your money to live. We'll go our separate ways. Qin Guang didn't say it clearly, but his meaning was clear. No matter how angry Rao Xinghai was, he could only report it as it was. On the way back to the office, Qin Guang received an unexpected call. It was from Old Master Jean. Qin Guang chatted with him briefly. Old Master Jean didn't reveal too much to him. He was just concerned about Qin Guang's current mental state. He was afraid that Qin Guang had a hard time getting over it. Qin Guang didn't like other old masters, but Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage's grandfather had been helping him from the beginning. He couldn't be cold to him, so he spoke politely to him. Before hanging up, Old Master Jin hinted to Qin Guang about Xinghai. Old Master Jin must have received Rao Xinghai's report and called to dispel Qin Guang's concerns. Qin Guang pretended not to understand, so he didn't explain it to him. However, Qin Guang knew that Rao Xinghai had lowered his head at the speed of light. Perhaps Old Master Jin was the one who instructed Rao Xinghai to do this. However, they would never understand. Although Qin Guang loved money, he was no longer as attractive to him when he had money to a certain extent. It was already 9 p.m. when he arrived at the office. Su Li had already gotten off work and Lu Xiaoyang was still working on the copyrights. Qin Guang called Yu Hong and Fong Tianyu, who were still working overtime, to his office and announced his decision to them. After some discussion, the subsidiary company would be named Tianguang Media. It would still be Qin Guang's legal representative. It would be an empty shell for the time being. The specific arrangements were left to Yu Hong and Fong Tianyu. Qin Guang would be the one to do it. Since Lu Xiaoyang was also working on the copyrights, Qin Guang didn't want to waste his energy. He called Lu Xiaoyang and told him to buy some copyrights when he was free. It didn't matter if it was variety shows, animations, or American dramas. He could even buy some of the copyrights for web novels. Other than a certain book called Billionaire Young Master's Cruel and Doting Wife, Please Love Me 1001 Times, everything else was fine. After buying these copyrights, they would all be placed under Tianguang Media. As for the funds needed for the acquisition, they would discuss the project for the time being. When Rao Xinghai was done with the matter and sent the money to them, they would immediately start work. After that, Qin Guang called Tang Xiaokai, who was far away overseas. Actually, he didn't need to specifically communicate with Tang Xiaokai about this. However, Tang Xiaokai had given him money and people in the early stages of his business. He was very kind. Now he had to make things clear and let him understand that he had no intention of abandoning him to avoid any future conflicts. Tang Xiaokai was a sensible person. Although Qin Guang's actions had caused Tang Jiefun to make a lot less money in a certain sense, he didn't expect to make a return on his investment in Tianguang Media. He hadn't even lost all his money yet. Instead, his investment of $20 million had increased a few times in value. That was already a pleasant surprise. Besides, Xinghai's decision had nothing to do with him. It was the higher-ups who wanted to send money to Qin Guang through another channel. Tang Xiaokai was actually glad that he didn't have to take the blame again. In the end, Tang Xiaokai took a roundabout approach and mentioned another matter to Qin Guang. "Brother Guang, what's going on between you and my sister recently?" Qin Guang was stunned. "What's wrong? What did Sister Ing say to you?" "Sister, brother, the two of you are so romantic." "My sister didn't say anything. Wasn't she preparing her thesis when you were organizing the language conference?" "Yeah. What's wrong?" "She's already published her thesis. I found someone to publish it for her. It's published in a rather high-class journal. Recently, that journal is planning to organize an academic exchange. She didn't intend to come when they invited her, but she changed her mind on the day that the World Language Conference you organized ended. Recently, she's been busy wrapping up matters at the hospital. Did you two quarrel? No. So what? Brother Guang, it's not that I want to criticize you, but don't be fooled by my sister's cheerful appearance. She hasn't been close to many guys since she was young. As her younger brother, I don't have the right to interfere in your affairs. But since the rice has been cooked, Brother Guang, you can't go back on your words. Let me tell you, don't think that a celebrity like Jin Shuiwei is so high and mighty, but when it comes to living, my sister is still better. Think about when you're sick. Qin Guang was stunned. The rice has been cooked? When did that happen? Why can't I remember? That's not right. There was a time when he and Tang Ying fell down together and Tang Xiaokai, who had just returned to China, bumped into them. Alright, Qin Guang thought about what happened on the plane with Tang Ying. It didn't seem that pure after all. To a certain extent he was right. As for why Tang Ying suddenly wanted to go to America after the World Language Conference, Qin Guang naturally understood. She was hiding and pretending to be an ostrich. Despicable. No wonder she didn't call me recently. Even when I'm going to squander again, she didn't make any moves. This sister wants to go back on her words after losing the bet. Shameless. She can even go back on her words. Qin Guang looked at his watch. It was 10 p.m. He wondered if Tang Ying was still on duty at the hospital. He decided to check on her first. He didn't really want her to honor her words. Even if she wants to write off her words, he has to agree first. It's not harmonious for her to break the contract unilaterally. Chapter 945. Actually, going to the hospital to look for Tang Ying at this time was a bit of a stroke of luck. But Qin Guang didn't expect that she would actually be blocked. Just as he walked up the stairs, he saw Tang Ying hurrying out of her office in a white coat. Her hair looked a little messy and her complexion didn't seem to be very good, looking a little pale. It seemed that she had been trying her best to clean up the mess on hand in order to escape, and it was quite tiring. She walked quickly, looking down at her phone with a frown. He didn't know what had happened to make her so anxious. Qin Guang saw that she was walking straight towards him with her head lowered, so he deliberately didn't make a sound. When she got closer, he suddenly let out a cry. "Where are you going?" Tang Ying let out a sharp scream. She looked up abruptly and saw that it was Qin Guang. She was instantly embarrassed and angry. "What are you doing? Are you trying to scare me to death?" Qin Guang didn't expect her to be so loud, so he hurriedly made a shushing gesture. "Lower your voice. It's midnight in the hospital and the patients are all asleep. It's forbidden to make noise." Tang Ying gave him a dirty look. "It's all your fault. You scared me when you had nothing better to do and now you're lecturing me." Qin Guang grinned. "It's all because you're always looking down at your phone when you're walking. People like you are the type of people who keep their heads down on the internet." Tang Ying tugged at his shirt. "Go away. Don't you know?" Qin Guang was stunned. "Don't know what? You really don't know? I thought you came because of Miss Tong. What's wrong with her? Why didn't she tell you when something happened to her?" Tang Ying said as she pulled Qin Guang to the emergency department of the inpatient department. Qin Guang followed behind, confused. He subconsciously thought that something might have happened to Wu Tong. What's going on? He was a little anxious. He knew that Wu Tong had come back to be the bureau chief. Previously, because he had to solve the problem of the internal force martial artist, he did not want to involve her, a police chief who was between an ordinary person and a related person. Therefore, when he had nothing to do, he deliberately did not contact Wu Tong to avoid arousing suspicion. Otherwise, with her overflowing sense of justice and sometimes reckless behavior, coupled with her little bit of power and connections to inquire about relevant matters, it would be troublesome if she were to follow them. Ever since the last time Qin Guang held a piano performance in Beijing, Wu Tong led a team to provide security for him. The two of them hadn't seen each other for a long time and they rarely even called each other. Wu Tong was well aware of this. She was helpless, but there was nothing she could do. Ever since Qin Guang became the director of the Guangdong General Administration, she had also inquired about a lot of information from Wu Shan. Gradually, Wu Shan told her that what Qin Guang was facing now was beyond the level of his qualifications as the head of the department. Things had become unimaginably troublesome. If ordinary people were to get involved, on the one hand they might encounter unimaginable dangers. On the other hand, it would also become a breakthrough point for others to threaten Qin Guang. It was precisely because she knew these things that Wu Tong deliberately kept a distance from Qin Guang on the surface. When she returned to Wujing to be the director, she simply told Qin Guang that she was back. It wasn't because she was afraid of danger. After all, being a police officer wasn't a safe job. She just didn't want to be a burden to Qin Guang, especially after she heard that he sent his family overseas. Thus, she was even more determined in her decision. Sometimes she would think that Qin Guang's growth was too fast. It was as if he was just an insignificant young man in school who still needed her protection. But in the blink of an eye, he ran a company and became the director. He suddenly rose to a height that was difficult for her to reach. The change was too fast and she was caught off guard. From time to time when she was busy with work, Wu Tong would think about what kind of existence she was to Qin Guang. What kind of role did she play in his heart? Did he not care about her? Of course not. When she was kidnapped by the World Destroyer, her life was hanging by a thread. At that time, Qin Guang was not strong at all. He descended from the sky with his bare hands and saved her from certain death. In this world, besides him, there was no other man who could do such a thing. At that time, the two of them had only met each other a few times. They were just friends who got along well with each other. There was even a small conflict between them. Although they claimed to be sister and brother, they were not related by blood. Wu Tong even put herself in Qin Guang's shoes. When faced with such a choice, she was afraid that she would not be as brave and fearless as he was. Therefore, he definitely cared about her. But in the end, no one was perfect. This bad brother of hers also had the bad habits that his peers should have. His heart was always wandering. Fortunately, she did not expect anything. She was older than him by 5 years. It was good that they maintained their current relationship and there was no pressure on them. Wu Tong actually vaguely knew about the destruction of the Shadow Alliance. She also knew about Qin Guang's recent movements and also knew about his resignation. These were all news that she heard from Wu Xian, who was close to the higher-ups and was the representative of the younger generation. Until now, Wu Tong had not taken the initiative to contact Qin Guang. On one hand, it was because she was busy with work. On the other hand, she knew that Qin Guang had a lot of things to do. But most importantly, she wanted to see when this heartless brat would think of her. Ever since she found out that Qin Guang had resigned, she had been counting the time every day. If this guy didn't call in another 3 days and insisted on contacting him, then he would be dead. In the end, she was unlucky. Originally, ever since she became the bureau chief, whether it was the people in the bureau or her father, Wu Shan, they were determined not to give her the opportunity to personally go to work. In order to find a chance to rush to the front line, Wu Tong had recently stopped driving to and from work. Instead, she took the subway. Even if she could only catch a thief, it would be enough to satisfy her craving. Today she bumped into one and was immediately overjoyed. Usually with her skills, it was too easy to deal with a thief. But today that guy seemed to be on steroids. After she found him at the subway station, he turned around and ran extremely fast. Even with Wu Tong's top-notch stamina among the male students in Shun's special training camp, she almost couldn't catch up. Later, when she was about to catch up, that guy turned around and threw the large-screen smartphone he had just stolen at her. Why did he emphasize the large screen? It was because the phone really hurt when it hit her shoulder. But after that guy threw the phone like a cannonball, he strangely fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth and twitching. Wu Tong still managed to handcuff him with one hand. She turned around and saw that the phone that hit her shoulder was completely deformed on the ground. Her collarbone was swollen and painful. Her collarbone was actually broken by the phone that was thrown at her so close. Wu Tong was extremely shocked. She was not an ordinary person. She was well-trained and proficient in fighting. Her bones were far harder than ordinary people. And who could easily break a person's collarbone with a phone? Who could throw a phone like a cannonball with so much force? You're not Qin Guang. Wu Tong struggled to call her colleagues in the bureau to send this guy to the hospital with her. But on the way to the hospital, that guy woke up and seemed to be fine. On the way, she actually wanted to call Qin Guang and tell him that she was injured today. But she finally endured it. Since she said that she would endure it, she couldn't easily admit defeat. Do you know? Your big sis is injured. Although I don't know why she didn't tell you about it, when you see her later, you can't tell her that you came to see me. No matter how you lie, you have to say that you found out about it and came to see her. Just treat it as a way to make her happy. Tang Ying led the way in front while whispering to Qin Guang. Qin Guang nodded. Yeah, I know. I'd like to see what kind of thief was able to break Sister Wu Tong's bones. Vaguely, he suddenly realized that Tang Ying's decision to run away might not be because she wanted to renege on the bet. But he didn't say it out loud. It was meaningless. History had taught him that it was useless to overthink things. As the saying goes, the boat will cross the bridge when it comes to it. That was the right path in life. The two walked side by side into the emergency surgery consultation room. Wu Tong, who was lying on the bed with a pale face, frowned and deep in thought, suddenly turned to look at the two of them. Her face suddenly blossomed into a smile. "Why are you here?" Tang Ying secretly rolled her eyes. She knew it would turn out like this. The two of them had obviously come in together, but this guy who only cared about the opposite sex completely ignored her. Qin Guang hesitated for a moment. Actually, he didn't want to lie. Just now To his surprise, Tang Ying, who was standing beside him, seemed to have seen through his thoughts and interrupted him. "I bumped into him on the way here. Your little brother sure is resourceful. He found out the moment you got into trouble." Since Tang Ying had already lied, Qin Guang couldn't just turn around and expose her in front of her face. He could only chuckle. "I say, you're really something. You're already a bureau chief. Why do you have to catch a thief yourself?" Wu Tong raised her uninjured hand and clenched her fist. "My hands are itchy." He believed what Tang Ying said. It was unlikely that Tang Ying was the one who informed Qin Guang. After all, when she arrived at the hospital, she found out that the doctor on duty was a male doctor. She didn't want him to bandage her, so she texted Tang Ying. The doctor on duty was relieved. After saying goodbye to Tang Ying, he retreated out of the treatment room and closed the door behind him. Tang Ying went to lock the treatment room door. She then turned to look at Qin Guang. She couldn't be bothered to ask for Wu Tong's opinion. She simply said, "All right, you two can stop reminiscing. Miss Tong, take off your coat first. I'll check your injuries." She had bandaged Wu Tong's wounds many times since she was young. Sometimes she even felt that it was all thanks to Wu Tong that she fell in love with being a doctor. "Oh," Wu Tong gritted her teeth and started to take off her coat. She really didn't care about Qin Guang. She didn't think it was necessary at all. Qin Guang felt his heart ache when he saw Wu Tong's face turn red from the pain. He walked up to her and gently placed his fingers on her collarbone. He channeled some inner force into her body to suppress the pain a little. Wu Tong was stunned. She turned to look at him. "You've really become a martial arts master?" Qin Guang grunted. "The person in front of you is the current, oh no, the greatest martial arts master in history." "Pucky." Wu Tong rolled her eyes. With Tang Ying's help, she carefully took off her coat. She was only wearing a sky blue bra inside. Chapter 946. Hearing those words, Qin Guang's calm face froze with his hands trembling. He might be close to Wu Tong, but he had never taken advantage of her eyes in the past. Fortunately, his acting skills had reached perfection. Although his heart was pounding, he didn't show it on his face. Tang Ying sneaked a peek at Qin Guang's expression before focusing all her attention on Tang Ying. Wu Tong was actually quite shy, but her shoulder was hurting badly and it didn't seem like a big deal to let him take a look. As expected of an outstanding student from Shun's special training camp. Although Wu Tong's neck was blushing, her face was completely under control. But that wasn't the end. Tang Ying squinted her eyes and carefully examined Wu Tong's collarbone. She lifted her fingers and gently pulled open the strap of her bra. "All right, I need to fix the bandages on your upper body and take off your bra." Wu Tong glared at her. "Huh? What huh?" It wasn't the first time, so he was quick. "Forget it, Qin Guang, help me undo the strap." Qin Guang gulped down a mouthful of saliva and felt that he had done a great job as a nurse. Sister Wu Tong, I'll do it?" Wu Tong's body stiffened and she snorted. All right. Be gentle." Qin Guang placed his finger on it and clumsily pulled it open bit by bit. With a click, it unlocked. "You're so slow. What haven't you two done before? Why are you pretending to be innocent?" Tang Ying impatiently pulled the sky blue bra away from the front and emphasized, "Lady Tong, don't move your hands around. Otherwise, your injuries will worsen. You're jumping around happily." "Lady Ying, shut up." Wu Tong couldn't hold it in anymore. She had seen Qin Guang's every move before, but now there was a third party around. It was a little too stimulating. Unknowingly, her skin gradually turned pink and she had goosebumps all over her body. After a long while, Wu Tong finally calmed down. Fortunately, her back was facing that guy and he couldn't see anything. Wait, what is this? Damn it. What a scam. Wu Tong raised her head and looked at the mirror in front of her, as well as Qin Guang's shifty eyes that were staring at her chest through the mirror. I'm done for. I've been seen naked. Forget it, I'll just watch. I won't lose any meat anyway. Qin Guang's eyes widened. At first he had the same thought as Wu Tong that he could not see anything behind him. However, the mirror in the emergency room was a standard feature. It was hung on the wall so he could see it when he raised his head. Tang Ying, who had just returned from concocting the medicine, almost laughed out loud when she saw the two of them staring at each other dumbstruck. No one knew what was going through Tang Ying's mind. She subconsciously pushed Wu Tong's chest and turned to Qin Guang with a smirk. Are you dumbfounded? Wu Tong was agitated and screamed, Ah! Don't mess around. Don't move. Don't move. I've applied some ointment for you. Qin Guang looked at the two trembling bunnies and thought to himself, the old man didn't learn that dart technique for nothing. My eyesight is really good. Those clear skin lines, that color, that tall and straight figure. Take it, take it. Tang Ying stopped fooling around and became obedient. She quickly applied the ointment for Wu Tong. At this moment Wu Tong's collarbone was red and swollen. Tang Ying's movements were also very careful. Although Wu Tong grimaced in pain from time to time, she forced herself to endure it. Since she was half naked she felt a little awkward, so she decided to say something to divert attention. She imitated Guan Gong's imposing manner of scraping bones to treat wounds and said casually, The thief we caught today is really strange. He looks so skinny but he's so strong. It's weird. A skinny man who could easily injure Wu Tong? Qin Guang's eyes were still staring at the mirror shamelessly, but his brows were slightly furrowed. He subconsciously thought that Wu Tong's words were related to inner force martial artists. But on second thought he felt that it was unlikely. The saying that the poor study while the rich practice martial arts was not groundless. Without some financial foundation, it was impossible to practice martial arts. Those who were able to practice martial arts were either from various sects or clans. Even if they weren't, they were at least from wealthy families. Almost no poor person would be able to practice martial arts without any financial foundation. But as long as they were successful, the worst they could do was at least at the level of Lu Chao's bodyguard, Tai Fanshu. For example, Xin Qin and Wu Miaowan's sects were small and incomparable to the 3 aristocratic families, the 8 major sects and the 27 sections. They belonged to the 4th tier of sects in Jianghu, but they never had to worry about money. It was impossible for someone who had to sneak around on the subway to possess inner force. At present, almost all inner force martial artists had been registered in the headquarters, so there were very few who were wandering outside. Most of them were senior experts who had been living in seclusion for years, so it was even more impossible for them to be thieves. Qin Guang couldn't help but be curious. What kind of person was he? He asked, Where is he now? Wu Tong said, He went to the hospital for a simple examination and found that there was nothing wrong with him. He has been sent to the detention center. Then I'll go meet him and see what kind of person he is. Save it. You've already caught him. Are you going to beat him up? Wouldn't that be lynching? Don't worry. Stealing and assaulting a police officer are enough to make him suffer. You'd better not interfere with my work. With your bad temper you can make small things into big things. Wu Tong immediately rejected Qin Guang's proposal. Seeing that she insisted, Qin Guang didn't say anything else. He secretly laughed at himself. He had just thrown away the title of the director of the Guangding headquarters, but he still hadn't completely adjusted his mentality. He was subconsciously worried about the country and the people. Letting out a sigh, Qin Guang replied, All right, I'll listen to you, but you have to be careful. It's easy for you to make enemies out of your position, so you have to tell me if anything happens. I'm not bragging, but I'm really powerful now. I can fight 100 people in minutes. Hey, don't worry. I won't be stubborn. On the other side, Tang Ying deftly fixed Wu Tong's bandages and splints. Then she clapped her hands. Done. You're also an old patient. You know you have to move your hands less. Eat more vegetables, eggs and meat. I won't emphasize it to you. Come to me tomorrow and the day after I'll change your dressing. Although her real profession wasn't orthopedics, her skills were extremely high. The triangular bandages were quite exquisite. Next to her, Qin Guang asked, I don't need to be hospitalized? He pretended to ask as he continued to glance at the mirror. There's nothing to see. Her upper body was tightly bound by bandages and splints. Her upper body was tightly wrapped and airtight. Wu Tong waved her hand indifferently. Why would I need to be hospitalized for such a small injury? I'll be fine in a few days. She wasn't being stubborn. When she was studying and training in the police academy, she had fallen from a platform several meters high. Her fall was much worse than this one, but it didn't take long for her to recover. Her bone healing ability was far stronger than the average person's. This was probably the real secret behind her strong close combat ability despite being a woman. It was a natural gift. Qin Guang turned to look at Tang Ying. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end he didn't bring it up. Instead he said to Wu Tong, "You can't drive now. Why don't I send you home?" Wu Tong nodded. "Okay, then we'll go back now. Missing, can you help me put on my clothes?" As she said that, she slightly tugged at the bandages under her chest. "Missing, you're too tight. Are you trying to flatten me?" "Shut up. Your bones are fractured. If you don't fix them tighter, you'll move around and injure yourself." Tang Ying couldn't be bothered to talk to her. Just as she put on her coat, Wu Tong's phone rang again. He picked it up and chatted for a while before hanging up. She looked at Qin Guang dejectedly. "I forget it. Qin Guang, you can go back by yourself. My dad said he's coming to pick me up." After saying that, she seemed to be afraid that Wu Shan would bump into Qin Guang. She got up and hurried to the door. As soon as she opened the door, Wu Shan's voice came from outside. "I told you to be more obedient, but you wouldn't listen. Now you're hurt, right? Happy now?" Wu Shan scolded Wu Tong. "None of your business. Aren't you the same? You're hurt less, aren't you? Why are you like this again?" All right. I got it. I'll be more careful next time. Go. I'll go say thank you to Tang Ying." Tang Ying has already returned to her office. She's very busy. She doesn't have time to wait for you to say thank you. Besides, there's no need for thanks between us sisters. Go. As Wu Tong and Wu Shan's voices faded away, Qin Guang was left in a daze as he had no idea what was going on. Qin Guang turned to look at Tang Ying. "What's going on?" "It seems like Sister Wu Tong is asking me to avoid talking to Uncle Wu Shan." Tang Ying's eyes flickered slightly, but seeing that she couldn't avoid it, she sighed. "He told me about it yesterday. Isn't it because of you? What's wrong? You used to work in a very special department, right?" Qin Guang nodded. "Yes, very special." "What's her name?" Tang Ying's curiosity was suddenly piqued. "I asked her, but she wouldn't tell me. She only said that the confidentiality level is very high. According to the rules, she doesn't even have the right to know. She tells me it's against the rules. There's nothing that can't be said here. It's up to me whether or not I can keep it a secret." But light swollen chrysanthemum? Qin Guang knew it would be like this. Wrong. What nonsense are you thinking about? Light as in radiance, calm as in sea stabilizing needle? Tang Ying looked him up and down. What a perverted name. Did you come up with it? I'm really innocent. But I heard that when I was named, it was because of the word light in my name. Alright, let's not talk about the name anymore. Anyway, Lady Tong said that it's easy for you to resign and leave, but it seems that some people don't want to let you off the hook completely. Their original intention was to let your old friend Wu Shan interact with you more. They don't want you to be a free man. Uncle Wu Shan will advance soon, but the things he's in charge of shouldn't be much different from now. If he maintains a relationship with you, he might be able to meet some people's needs. Chapter 947. Qin Guang rolled his eyes. President Rao was not the only backup plan prepared by the elders. These people were good at playing one trick behind his back. On one hand, they wanted him to give up his power, but on the other hand, they did not want to let go of his influence among the inner force users. Perhaps more importantly, they did not want to let go of his peerless martial arts that allowed him to kill Ouyang Tianxing. In the end, they still wanted to turn him into their tool. Tang Ying saw that he was distracted and looked at him curiously. How powerful are you now? I'm a professional doctor, but I can't see any changes with my naked eye. No, your muscles are a little stronger, but you're just a person with a nose and eyes. You don't have 3 heads and 6 arms. Qin Guang looked around and ran to the sink to find the faucet. He placed his thumb and index finger on the metal faucet and exerted some force. Here, see for yourself how powerful I am. Tang Ying walked over slowly and stared at the faucet. There were 2 clear fingerprints on the metal faucet. How did you do it? Tang Ying was shocked. He only used 2 fingers to exert a little force. He didn't even see him use much strength, but it was already like this. It was merely 2 fingers. How much strength did he have? Qin Guang chuckled. Just a little pinch and it's like this. Tang Ying still could not understand. From a medical point of view, Qin Guang's bones and muscles were like a hydraulic press. Tang Ying wanted to examine his hand again, but there was a knock on the door. Section Chief Tang? Can I come in now? Tang Ying could not care less about Qin Guang. She quickly picked up the bra that Wu Tong had left on the blanket. What's wrong? Come in. The male doctor from the emergency department poked his head in. Section Chief Tang, you guys, Tang Ying understood and quickly said. Hey, we'll go now. When the man turned and left, Tang Ying grabbed the sky blue bra on the bed and stuffed it into Qin Guang's hand. Take it. Qin Guang took it in his hand. He could still feel the warmth of her body through his fingers. What? Take care of your sister's things for her. I'm so busy right now that I don't have time to send them back to her. Whether you want to keep them for yourself or send them back to her, that's up to you. Sister Tang Ying, I still need a pair of lace underwear. The 2 walked out of the emergency room. Tang Ying then said, forget it, I won't ask you anymore. If there's nothing else, I'll go back to my shift. When she said this, Qin Guang felt that her eyes were slightly evasive. It was obvious that she had remembered the bet and was pretending not to know. She really wanted to go back on her word. Sister Tang Ying, I saw another chief physician in your office. You're not on duty today, right? Tang Ying was taken aback. Fine, you saw through me. Qin Guang suddenly took a deep breath and asked, so, you want to go back on your word? Tang Ying's body trembled. She was slightly stunned at first, but she soon noticed the provocative look in Qin Guang's eyes. Who said I want to go back on my word? Then I heard from someone that you're planning to run to America. Did little Kai tell you that? Don't worry about where I heard it from. Just tell me, are you trying to go back on your word? If you really want to go back on your word, then just say it. I won't say another word. I've always been a reasonable person. But I'll never bet with you again. Say this is a game of luck. Go. I Tang Ying always mean what I say. I never go back on my word. Last time even, I was on the plane because of you. Then why do you suddenly want to go to America? Don't tell me you think I'm afraid I'll let Miss Tong down, so I'm purposely avoiding you? Unexpectedly, Tang Ying took the initiative to say this. Isn't that so? This time it was Qin Guang's turn to be at a loss. Tang Ying smiled disdainfully. Are you kidding me? If I really thought that way, I would have ignored you a long time ago. I know your sister Wu Tong's thoughts better than anyone else. I can guarantee you that she doesn't mind at all. Back then when we were watching porn together we even… Anyway, this has nothing to do with her. Qin Guang's eyes lit up. What's going on between the 2 of you? Get lost. Are you going to listen to my explanation? Tang Ying composed herself and sighed. To tell you the truth, I've been back in China for more than half a year. I've met many patients and finished my thesis. But recently, I've encountered some unpleasant issues when publishing my thesis. I had to ask little Kai for help to resolve them. Let's not talk about these trivial matters. Anyway, I'm a little disappointed with the state of research in China. I feel that staying in the hospital is a little boring. I plan to take this opportunity to visit my alma mater. If it's possible, I'd like Morelands and Gokyo University's medical department to jointly set up a research institute. I'm just going to switch from clinical to scientific research. If I'm just going to be a clinical doctor for the rest of my life, I won't be able to save many people. Only by switching to scientific research and making some achievements in academia can I realize my ambition. In the past half a year, I've pretty much figured out the situation in China. It's time to take the next step. Nobel Prize in Medicine? Qin Guang narrowed his eyes and looked at her. He had intended to tease her, but unexpectedly Tang Ying raised her eyebrows. That's right. This is my lifelong pursuit. For this, I can stay single for the rest of my life, just like your sister Wu Tong, who swore to catch all the criminals in the world. The 2 of you are really good friends. Tang Ying covered her mouth and laughed. You can call it birds of a feather. Qin Guang also laughed. He finally understood the real situation in Tang Ying and Wu Tong's hearts, and he felt a lot more relieved. He and Tang Ying had known each other for a long time. If this kind of words came out of someone else's mouth, it might seem a little ridiculous. However, the person who said this was the youngest doctor in the famous Moorlands Medical College in the past 20 years. And she was already famous both domestically and abroad at such a young age. Qin Guang knew that she was serious. When she said these words in a seemingly joking tone, her eyes flashed with the brilliance of incomparable determination. People will always be great because of their dreams. Moreover, Tang Ying's seemingly unreachable dream was great in itself. Qin Guang's slightly out-of-control desire from taking advantage of Wu Tong's eyes in the mirror had unknowingly dissipated a lot. Okay, I understand, but I don't know how I can help you. If you need anything, just let me know. It was a pity that Tang Ying was not short of money. Otherwise, Qin Guang felt that if she wanted to set up a research institute, he would be able to sponsor some of it. However, when he thought about her rich younger brother and her family's assets, there was no need for him to help. Okay, thank you for your kindness. Qin Guang hesitated for a moment. Then, about the bet, forget it. Just pretend I never mentioned it. Seeing how Tang Ying was obsessed with knowledge and had lofty ambitions, Qin Guang felt ashamed of his inferiority. Her brilliance made him seem like a vile person. Really? Tang Ying tilted her head and looked straight at him. Qin Guang nodded reluctantly. Really? You won't regret it? No. Come on. Looking at your aggrieved face, even I feel sorry for you. Don't look down on me. Although I plan to stay single for the rest of my life, I don't reject men. I am also a normal woman. What do you mean? Tang Ying smiled meaningfully. You know what I mean. Qin Guang's eyes widened. He roughly understood what Tang Ying meant. What did the old man have to deserve? Okay, it's just that I've been too busy recently. Otherwise, I would have fulfilled my promise for you tonight. Anyway, I'm telling you, you don't have to worry. Sigh, poor me, I only know how to deal with books and patients all day. It's not easy to meet a young man that I like. You're not bad, and a lot of things have happened with you on and off. What's that saying again? Boiling a frog in warm water. Yes, I don't know if you're a frog or warm water. Anyway, we'll get to know each other sooner or later, at least until I meet a man who is more reliable and interesting than you. Do you have confidence in yourself? Qin Guang really didn't know how to answer her. It didn't seem right to say that he had confidence in himself. It was strange for her to talk about such improper things with a straight face. But if he said that he wasn't confident, he would feel uncomfortable. As the two chatted, they unknowingly returned to Tang Ying's dormitory. Her roommate, the female doctor, was not around tonight. Qin Guang sat down and took a sip of the cold tea. You're not going to the on-call room? I'll go later. I need to take a break. By the way, if we can really set up a research institute, won't you be a professor at my school? Tang Ying nodded. That's right. Say hello to your teacher. Go, go, go. You want to be the director of the research institute? That's amazing. Sigh, it's a pity that I don't know how I can help you. I only have money now, but you don't lack it. Qin Guang brought up the past again and sighed. At this moment, he really didn't have any other thoughts in his mind. Unexpectedly, after listening to his words, Tang Ying's eyes gradually brightened as she looked at him. Qin Guang felt goosebumps under her gaze. What are you thinking about? Tang Ying suddenly straightened up and approached him. You really want to help me? Other than that kind of thing? Qin Guang nodded blankly. Of course, don't think that I only have that one function. That's right. In my eyes, you have other functions. What are you trying to say? I also know that there are some talented people in this world who can practice a kind of qigong called internal force. You said that you're already the world, oh no, the first in history. You're not bragging, are you? Qin Guang nodded. I'm not bragging. I'm telling the truth. Then does this mean that your talent in practicing internal force is countless times greater than that of ordinary people? Qin Guang nodded shamelessly. That's right. My talent is extraordinary. It's rare to see one in 1,000 years. You've shown me your ability in that area before. You even broke the wooden plank. I also know that you participated in the arm wrestling competition in Detroit. Just now you used 2 fingers to flatten the iron pipe. I didn't deliberately think about it before, but now I want to know. How is it that your hand doesn't look particularly strong, but it can completely suppress those monstrous men in arm wrestling? Why is the strength in your hand so great? Qin Guang gradually began to panic. So, be my lab rat. Your body must be different from an ordinary person's. I even suspect that compared to ordinary people, you're superior from the genetic level. If you really want to help me, let me study you." The more Tang Ying spoke, the brighter the light in her eyes became. Step by step she approached Qin Guang, forcing him to retreat into a corner. Her eyes were like those of a hungry wolf that had spotted its prey. They were even brighter than the LED lights on the roof. You want to slice me up?" Qin Guang swallowed his saliva, his intestines turning green with regret. Chapter 948. His brain must have short-circuited. How could he not have thought of this? Perhaps there were at least tens of millions of people who wanted to study him. The number of people in official scientific research institutions could probably form a line from the East Gate to the West Gate of the five capitals. It was only because of his identity in the past as well as the tragedy of Su Lixing, who had a high position in the academic world, and perhaps some old man's obstruction, that such a thing had not happened to him so far. But Tang Ying was different. The most important thing was that they were very familiar with each other, and their relationship was not ordinary. Others did not dare to mention it, but she could. If someone else came to mention it, he could simply kick them away, but he could not do this to Tang Ying. She might have thought of this briefly in the past, but at that time she was still focused on clinical work and did not think of changing to scientific research. On the other hand, she did not expose this matter, and she did not show too much of an unusual side. Now she had finally discovered it. She had also reacted. Not only was she stronger than ordinary people, but she was also stronger than the internal force martial artists who were already beyond ordinary people. This was terrible. She did not know how to make friends. "What nonsense are you thinking about? How could I bear to cut you up? It's not like I'm a fool to do such a thing." "Then what do you want? Just give me a sample of your body regularly. Stab me every once in a while. Do you have to be so hardcore?" "Nonsense, some things are more convenient to extract genes than muscles. It's not that uncomfortable and it will be over with a close eye." "Don't say it so lightly, right? With my many years of experience, even if I can only decipher the mystery of your genes that are superior to ordinary people's, it is enough to let human evolution to a new level. I even feel that you represent another stage in the evolution of mankind. Admit it, didn't you already know? I remember you once told me about God. You already had this feeling at that time, right? But from a scientific perspective, the so-called God actually refers to another type of person who is more powerful than ordinary people, like our country's legendary figures like Fuxi, Xianyuan, and Qiyu. You don't seem to care about what I think at all." The more Qin Guang listened, the more shocked he became. At this moment, Tang Ying reminded him of another person who had died but was still alive, Nikasi Taipel. In a sense, Tang Ying and Nicole were actually quite similar. They were both mad scientists. These kinds of people looked no different from ordinary people under normal circumstances, but once their thoughts were completely opened up, they would immediately reveal their differences from ordinary people. They had extremely terrifying logical reasoning and analysis abilities. They could often find the entry point that ordinary people couldn't comprehend from the small details, and emit unimaginable ideas. This train of thought seemed absurd at times, but it was extremely logical. Great scientific achievements often came from a sudden idea after a long period of preparation, just like Newton's discovery of gravity. At this moment, Tang Ying seemed to be making wild guesses, but many of her deductions were on point. "So what are you planning to do? Please give me a definite answer, I'm really scared." "Didn't I already say that? I want to study your genes. Can I refuse? Then I'll die in front of you. Don't be like this. Do you want my blood or my flesh? Or should I give you a few strands of my hair? If it doesn't hurt, I don't particularly mind. For the sake of our relationship, anything can be discussed." "Hair won't do. Although I can extract part of the genes, it's still the stratum corneum after all. It's not representative. Can you stop keeping me in suspense? Just give me a quick death." Tang Ying finally used her chest to push Qin Guang hard against the wall. Her hand slowly moved downwards. Her face was red, but it wasn't a red of shyness. Instead, it was a flush of excitement and ecstasy, like Columbus who discovered a new continent. She seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be answering Qin Guang's question. "I was really stupid in the past. Why didn't I think of this earlier? Actually, I've already extracted a few samples from your body, but at that time I didn't even realize it. What a waste of resources." As soon as her voice fell, Qin Guang's body stiffened. A certain part of him was pinched. He finally understood. After all this time she had her eyes on his countless monkeys and grandchildren. My sister is amazing. Why didn't you say so earlier? You really scared this baby to death. Be reasonable, this can be done. I think so too. So, I'm suddenly interested in honoring the bet. Can you not be so realistic? There's no other way. I'm just that realistic. Are you interested now? Qin Guang realized that he had really been tortured tonight. Originally, when he first came here, his heart was in turmoil. Then he met Wu Tong. When he heard that Wu Tong was injured, his heart calmed down. Then he saw that Wu Tong's injury wasn't too serious. Between Tang Ying and Wu Tong, one was a wounded soldier and the other was a battlefield doctor. Coupled with the spring scenery in the mirror, his calm heart started to move again. Later he planned to use the excuse of sending Wu Tong home to have some fun, but in the end she ran away with her father. Later he was shocked by the ambitious Tang Ying. Ashamed of his inferiority, he activated his saint mode. In the end, it didn't take long for him to become a saint again. After so many twists and turns, he still had to have sex today. Damn it, fortunately this old man's mind and physical body have been tempered to be as strong as iron. If it was an ordinary person, they would have collapsed to the point where their eyes would have turned black after being tossed around in such a short period of time. 5 minutes later. Are we going to start now? Hey. 10 minutes later. Are you trying to break my ribs? Can you be more precise? I think I need some Vaseline. Give me a moment. Half an hour later. Can you cooperate a little? The heat from the friction is about to ignite. You can't blame me. It's not like you don't know how good I am. Forget it. I have a little movie here. Let's cooperate. An hour passed. I can't take it anymore. Come on, I feel like it's almost done. 2 hours passed. I'll be damned if I believe you. Tang Ying glared at Qin Guang fiercely as she took out a test tube from her desk and placed it on her lower abdomen. She carefully rubbed the bank card on her body. I won't use this trick on you next time. So, are we going to do something more directly? You wish. I'll buy you a small electric motor. As Qin Guang continued to take advantage of the situation, he looked at Tang Ying. When she was done, she slapped Qin Guang's hand away and wiped her body with a napkin. She then dressed up and said, "All right, you're no longer of any value to me today. Go away. I won't be sleeping tonight. I have to deal with the sample tonight or I'll only have 4 hours left. You know what I mean." But, you're not going to shower? I'm busy. I'll go to the bathroom after I'm done. Bye. With that she took the test tube and ran away. Qin Guang thought he would be able to sleep in Tang Ying's dormitory tonight. He never expected that she would really not go back to the dormitory. He waited in the dormitory for more than 10 minutes. When Qin Guang called her again, she was already at the cold storage of Gokyo University's old campus. While Qin Guang packed his belongings and left. His heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. He used to think he knew her well enough, but she had 1,000 faces. She was like a completely different person when she was at work and in life. But on second thought, it wasn't hard to understand. If she didn't have the spirit to study without distractions, how could she have gotten a PhD from Morelands University at the age of 26? In fact, a long time ago, Qin Guang had thought that he would eventually encounter a situation where people wanted to study him. After all, he had always been high profile. He had repeatedly displayed too many talents that surpassed his generation and race. But as his status rose, he gradually stopped worrying about such things. As long as he was unwilling, no one in this world could force him, not even the emperor himself. But he didn't expect that a thief in the house would be hard to guard against. Sister Tang Ying, who was on his side, was actually a mad scientist deep down. Moreover, her specialty matched his. Perhaps this was fate. From the first time he picked her up outside a bar when he was still on the internet, this day was destined. Forget it, let her study him. Anyway, he didn't suffer too much. Even if she really cracked some of the mysteries at the genetic level of his body, it was in fact the most basic body function among the countless skills and abilities provided by the heavenly Holy Grail. This didn't affect him being ahead of the human race and the times. It was an honor to be the cornerstone for her to realize her dream. Perhaps years later, because of his great and generous contribution, mankind would truly achieve a leap in evolution and march out of Earth and into the universe. As the greatest lab rat in history, he would also leave a deep mark in the history of mankind together with Tang Ying. He would certainly be remembered by history and engraved on a monument. This might become the greatest sperm donation in human history. Sitting in the phaeton, Qin Guang's face was shining with the same brilliance as Tang Ying's. I'm really great. Ahem. In the next few days, Qin Guang didn't run around anymore. Instead, he was a good student at school for a few days. In between, he visited Wu Tong. In the end, the elder sister had only been lying at home for less than 2 days before she was brought to her director's office. Because something had happened and it was a big deal. She was a little anxious. The thief she caught the day before yesterday had stopped breathing without any warning in the detention center. Although the whole process of the case had been recorded, which was enough to prove the innocence of the branch office, there was still some negative impact after all. Wu Tong also felt very innocent. During the whole process, she didn't even punch the thief once. During the examination at the hospital, there was no abnormality in the thief's body. When he was detained, he was also served well and there was no violation of any rules. According to the autopsy report, the cause of this person's death was due to overwork and the sudden functional exhaustion of the organs. On one hand, Wu Tong was busy providing evidence to prove the innocence of the law enforcement officers, and on the other hand, she had to deal with the influence of public opinion. So, even though her injury had not fully recovered, she could only go to work with it. Qin Guang couldn't help much in this matter. As for Tang Ying, she was completely in a state of work. Less than 3 days after taking samples from Qin Guang, she crossed the ocean and went abroad. Her plan to start a research institute was officially put on the agenda, and no one could stop it. Chapter 949. As for Qin Guang himself, things were still going according to plan. Although time was tight, the experienced Qin Guang manager handled things in an orderly manner. Apart from the fact that the male lead had not read the script nor participated in the rehearsals so far, Director Xianxia had to personally act as the male lead during the rehearsals to temporarily cooperate with the rehearsals. There was no other problem. The warm-up of the play on the internet was almost over. Just like in the past, the people who supported him and those who dissed him were divided into 2 groups. There was also the neutral group who had nothing to do with it and were enjoying the show. In short, it was boiling. Nowadays, Qin Guang's show never worried about attention and popularity. He had already walked further and further on the path of a phenomenal controversial figure. Once he set out, there would be no turning back. Unlike other celebrities after becoming famous, they would gradually cherish their feathers and try their best to get away from all kinds of disputes and criticism. However, the almighty Superman did not do so. Feathers? What was that? Why should he cherish them? This young man who had appeared out of nowhere was like a meteor spinning in the sky, a path of sparks and lightning, tossing and turning, never stopping. He never seemed to know how to restrain himself. He always liked to challenge things that others thought were impossible. Every time he fell silent for a short time, it seemed to mean that he would explode again. Every time he erupted, it was enough to shock everyone's eyeballs out of their sockets. Sorry, he was never interested in things that followed the rules. As long as he made a move, it would definitely be a big move that defied common sense. Even his die-hard fans, while stubbornly supporting him, would secretly have doubts in their hearts, worrying about whether he could really do it. But the more worried they were when he really did something incredible, the more shocked they were. The feeling of seeing the person they liked and admired once again overturning common sense and standing at the peak of the domain that he wanted to stand at was even stronger, making people's hearts beat faster and their blood boil. He made many people understand that in this world, many things that seemed impossible could actually be turned into reality. He even became the hope in many people's hearts. For example, when Qin Guang participated in the World Language Conference, a patient with lower limbs paralysis secretly made up his mind that if Qin Guang won the championship, he would try to walk again. If he tried again, perhaps his nerves would recover. In the end, Qin Guang succeeded, and the patient stood up on his own with tears brimming in his eyes. There was also a businessman who had lost all hope after his business failed. He sat on the balcony of a 28-story building and watched Qin Guang's live stream in the World Arm Wrestling competition. Finally, he gave up the idea of committing suicide and decided to face his fate bravely. The heavy debts he had on him were just like those huge men defeated by the thin Qin Guang. Although they looked strong, they were not invincible. There were actually quite a number of such people. Although many people were unwilling to admit it, Qin Guang had been using his seemingly absurd but actually surpassing absurd challenges to change the world bit by bit. As for the haters and haters who didn't like him, whenever he made a move, they would temporarily forget the past embarrassment and bite the bullet to slander him online or in real life. Even if they had been led into the ditch by him again and again, they would repeatedly tell themselves not to jump to conclusions easily in the future. But when this guy jumped out again and again, looking at what he was going to do and then using their self-proclaimed rational brain to judge, they couldn't help but question him subconsciously. It was precisely because of Qin Guang's complicated character that those who liked him even more because he didn't disappoint them time and time again. At the same time, those who hated him had no choice but to change their inclinations and like him. Of course, the most stubborn haters would gradually change from dislike to hatred because they lost face again and again, and become even more stubborn. But there was an old saying that a mediocre person who was not hated by others. Since embarking on the road of becoming a celebrity, Qin Guang didn't expect himself to please everyone. No one could be liked by everyone, let alone a flamboyant new internet celebrity like Qin Guang. It didn't matter if others liked him or hated him, said good things about him online, or changed different ways to slander him. If he could control them, he would control them a little. If he couldn't, he just let them be. Anyway, it was all about popularity. Being controversial was a torture and test for ordinary people, but for him who had long been trained to have a big heart and strong nerves, it could save him a lot of investment in publicity. Because of this, although there wasn't much investment in publicity for this play, it still caused quite a stir. In particular, some rumors came from some places which made this matter even more mysterious. It was said that the male lead Qin Guang hadn't been seen in several rehearsals. Instead, the young director Xianxia had rehearsed in place of him. When the other leading actors raised doubts, Xianxia, who had a good reputation in the industry, not only didn't grab his male lead back, but he also told the others not to ask too much and not to worry needlessly. No one knew how much money Xianxia had received from Qin Guang. He actually didn't care about his face and reputation. It was estimated that he could at least buy a suite in Yanjing Second Ring Road. If you, Qin Guang, are really busy, then we can just forget about it. But it was said that during this time he actually didn't care about the play and stayed in school like an ordinary student. Moreover, someone found the printed script that Xianxia had prepared for Qin Guang in his office. This meant that the male lead hadn't even read the script from beginning to end. Yes, you invited us to perform in the play and the remuneration is almost 5 times the market price. It's so high that it's impossible to refuse. But all the other professional actors and main producers are working hard to rehearse, and you, an unconventional male lead, actually don't care about it and become a student? You're messing with us. Of course, although almost all the main actors were dissatisfied, the remuneration was high, and the breach of contract was also high. They couldn't bear the cost of breaking the contract easily. Secondly, although Qin Guang was only a newcomer in the entertainment industry, some channels, both overt and covert, showed that he had power and influence beyond ordinary people's imagination. Although many people had the idea of refusing to perform, in the end they endured it. Forget it, a lifetime of fame will be ruined this time. I'll just treat it as accompanying the prince to study. I'll just play with him. Don't other professional singers sing on stage with President Chong from the Qianda group from time to time? Although this matter was a bit disgusting, it was over with a pinch. But in the end there were still people who were dissatisfied. Although they didn't show it on the surface, they couldn't help but say it secretly outside. In fact, Xianxia was also quite helpless. Although he knew Qin Guang's ability, he also felt that not reading the script from beginning to end was a bit strange. In private he had told Qin Guang many times, but Qin Guang just didn't listen. He was determined not to cooperate, and he even said, "Don't panic, the sky won't fall. Even if it does, I'll be able to hold it for you." In the end, Xianxia seemed to have no way to deal with this person, and could only let him do as he pleased. He also knew that the rumors that were spreading outside were actually spread by the internal staff of the production team. He asked Qin Guang if he wanted to rectify the internal situation and find out who was the one who didn't keep their mouth shut and had no professionalism. In the end, Qin Guang didn't care and said that he would let it be and not investigate the matter. At that time, the conversation between the two went like this. "Qin Guang, this isn't good for your reputation, right? It doesn't matter. It's meaningless to say so much before going on stage. Whether it's a donkey or a horse, we'll see in a minute. I understand the logic, but can you come over and take the script I printed back to have a look?" No need, my memory is very strong. I'll just read it once before going on stage. Also, if there are many people in the production team who are scolding me, don't hide it. You can complain about me as much as you want on the set. It'd be best if I can see you complaining outside tomorrow. That would be even better. I slightly regret coming here this time. Recently, my peers in the circle have already spread the word that I'm a laughing stock. Director Deng also called to scold me, saying that I didn't properly lead the show for you, but instead accompanied you to mess around. I had to quibble with him that I wanted to use the play to train you and barely muddle through. However, he was worried that if the show failed, it would cause your reputation to explode. At that time, the box office might also be affected. Okay, Brother Yang, let me ask you one thing. Do you trust my acting skills? If I go on stage, do you think I'll mess up? On the other side of the phone, Xianxia pondered for a moment. In his mind, he recalled the former boxing champion Ali, and said, as long as you can remember your lines, there won't be a problem. That's it. I have to go to class. Let's talk later. I'm hanging up. This was the longest conversation the two had ever had over the phone about the play. As a result, from that day onwards, the grapevine began to spread even more news. The play director Yang Shi, who had been helping the male lead Qin Guang, finally exploded. He flew into a rage on the set, smashed the script, smashed the phone, and kicked the table. Qin Guang asked him to complain a little, but Yang Shi forced himself to add scenes. He was also a little cautious. If he really messed up, others could at least see that he tried to save something. However, he couldn't stand that Master Qin Guang was too difficult to please. Brother Guang, we're friends, but you have to leave me a way out. Not to mention Yang Shi's acting was very effective. Young director Yang Shi lost his temper. I've never seen such an absurd actor. All main creators pay 5 times the price. Nouveau riche Qin Guang's artistic path. Shameless internet celebrity digs into the classic tarnishing art with money. The male lead of Thunderstorm, who doesn't rehearse or read the script. He has lost his bottom line to hype up. Famous director. If Qin Guang messes up Thunderstorm, I will call on the famous directors in the industry to boycott him. Internet celebrity nouveau riche, surpassing the existence of young male idols. Similar news spread like wildfire on the internet, like an unrestrained zebra. Chapter 950. This time, it's different from the past when Qin Guang was being protected by the old men in the dark. But it's different now. He had resigned and was no longer the director of the Guangdong General Administration. He had also clearly expressed that he had no interest in the officialdom. The elders had dealt with the father and son of the Chao family as he wished, and Chao Jingming had even become a deranged person. However, because of this, the two sides had become estranged and he seemed extremely unruly and difficult to control. His integrity and stubbornness were a double-edged sword. It made people not need to be too wary of him, but at the same time they could not put too much hope in him. When he said those words in the conference room, the disdain in his words, the contempt in his eyes, and the sympathy and disdain he had for those who were deeply mired in the mire, the old men could see it clearly and understand his attitude. Just as he said he would never become the same kind of person as them. His words made many elders angry. They felt that they had been humiliated, but everyone also knew that in a certain sense, Qin Guang's choice was also reasonable. These people had heavy responsibilities. For so many years they had had a bright and dark past. They had carried this bloated and huge country on their shoulders. Perhaps because of some selfish family interests, it was not easy for them to stagger through the swamp to this day. Although they were now in high positions, they were not happy. Many of them even had a past that they were not willing to face. This was a precious life experience, but it was inevitable that it was painful. Although no one regretted it because they did not think that others could do better than them, the blood on their hands and the promises they had broken in their hearts were all responsibilities that had to be borne to reach this position. They felt that they might not be great, but looking at the current situation in Wuxia, they did not disgrace the ideals in their hearts. Although society was still unfair and many people felt that the moon in foreign countries was especially round, in the end, it was almost to the point where everyone had clothes to wear and food to eat. Although many things and people had not been honorable enough, their conscience was clear. However, they could not deny Qin Guang's choice. It might be a better and brighter path. Compared to her, Qin Guang lived a more open life. He didn't have to hide so much filth in his heart. Perhaps if time could be reversed and they were given a second chance to choose when they were young, they might be more willing to live like Qin Guang. Since they couldn't change his personality and they couldn't drag him down this path, the elders didn't have the intention to continue to train him in the direction they wanted. In short, Qin Guang had no possibility of entering politics in the future, so his personal image was not that important. So now Qin Guang had completely become a wild wolf that was allowed to roam freely. He could do whatever he wanted. Even if others slandered him, the old man would not take the initiative to help him clean up the mess. As for Qin Guang himself, he deliberately let the public opinion on the internet ferment as it pleased. Even when Yu Hong asked him if he wanted to think of a way, he not only did not try to clear his name, but he also asked Yu Hong to take the initiative to pay more people to criticize him for acting in a drama. The more people scolded, the better. The more hatred they could attract, the better. Whoever wrote the most beautiful article would be able to make others gnash their teeth in anger. Qin Guang would even add money as a bonus. Qin Guang had absolute confidence in his acting skills. He did not believe that he would mess up Thunderstorm at all. At least that was what he thought until he opened the script for the first time. He had played this kind of trick more than once and it was always the same. He first suppressed it, then raised it. Now the more people criticized him, the more waves he would cause. On the other side, Tianguang Media was almost done by Yu Hong. The official registration was successful, and Lu Xiaoyang's acquisition of the IP was also in progress. Rao Xinghai, who was prepared to spend a lot of money, was having a headache, but the financing was still going well. In about a month's time, the newly registered Tianguang Media's financing and acquisition of shares would be officially unveiled. Time passed by unknowingly. It was already the end of the second week. At 7 o'clock that night, the drama was about to officially go on stage. Qin Guang, the male lead, finally arrived at the theater 4 hours earlier than usual. Other than Yang Shi, the other main cast members were basically in a state of explosion. "You're finally willing to come here. We almost thought that the male lead was the director himself. But there were only 4 hours left before the performance. What's the use of coming now? You might as well not come at all and just let director Yang do it himself. At least he can complete the whole scene." Yang Shi braced himself and brought Qin Guang in front of the main cast members. He felt like he was about to be ignited by the questioning gazes below. "Well, let me introduce everyone. This is the manager of Tianguang Media, Mr. Qin, also known as the almighty superhuman Qin Guang." Yang Shi swallowed his saliva, feeling quite stifled. "You guys might not believe it, but I'm going on stage in 4 hours. How can I still be so calm and introduce the male lead to the other main cast members?" Qin Guang waved his hand calmly and chuckled. "Hi everyone. I'm the main cast member of Thunderstorm, Qin Guang." The other 20 to 30 main cast members below the stage replied weakly, "Hello, Mr. Qin." Everyone called him Mr. Qin and no one called him by his name. It looked like they were respecting him, but in fact it was because no one really treated him as an actor. "You say you're the main cast, Qin Guang, but in our eyes, you're just a rich and capricious boss, Mr. Qin." Qin Guang was well aware of this, but he wasn't bothered by it. Looking at his watch, he said, "It's 3 p.m. right now and there's only 4 hours left until the stage. Everyone make your preparations. I have high hopes for this play." The moment he said that, everyone was stunned. "You have the cheek to say that? You have high hopes for this play? You have high hopes that you've never attended rehearsals or read the script. You also know that there are only 4 hours left, but you still forced yourself to come. You still have the cheek to lecture us? If it wasn't for your irresistible offer of 5 times the salary, we would have spat on you a long time ago. I've never seen such a shameless person." Finally, someone couldn't take it anymore. A young actress with delicate features, dressed in a plain-made costume, coughed violently and said, "Mr. Qin, I want to ask you a question." The moment she said that, the other actors' expressions changed. They knew she was going to make things difficult for them. Those who were unfamiliar with her didn't say a word and just waited to watch the show. Those who were close to her gave her looks, telling her not to stir up trouble at this time and not to cause trouble for herself. She had already held her nose for so long, she couldn't still wet the bed in the morning. Another middle-aged actress who was close to her, Yin Fei, who played the important role of Fan Yi, immediately tugged at her clothes and said, "Xiao Lu, don't mess around. Have you forgotten what I told you last night?" Shi Lu turned around and glanced at Yin Fei. "Sister Yin Fei, I understand, but I just can't take this lying down." "Sai Yu," Yin Fei didn't know what to say. Last night, when the two of them finished rehearsals and went out for supper, Shilu was full of complaints about Qin Guang and even wanted to give up the chance to perform. At that time, Yin Fei tried to persuade her. Although the male lead was very unreliable, a normal play wouldn't be able to achieve the impact of Thunderstorm. There were countless eyes all over the country waiting for it. When the time came, it didn't matter how bad Qin Guang's acting was. Although it might affect their acting standards and condition with him as a foil, wouldn't it reflect the high standards of these professional actors? I know you don't need money and don't care about his 5 times salary and compensation. But although you have some connections in the industry, you are still a newcomer. Participating in such a high-profile show is good for your development. At most, don't treat this play as an art performance. Treat it as a reality show. At that time, Shilu was reluctantly persuaded by Yin Fei. But she was still young and impetuous. Today she was like a barrel of gunpowder. On the other side, Qin Guang had already turned his gaze over and looked straight at the girl. Oh. What's the problem? Shilu took a step forward. President Qin, do you know the name of the character you're going to play? Hearing this, Xianxi's expression changed slightly. He stepped forward and interrupted. Shilu, don't joke around. Qin Guang carried it before. Qin Guang answered straightforwardly. I don't know. F***ck. Xianxi was dumbfounded. I was just about to wash the floor for you. You turned around and peed on the floor. Can't we talk properly? How do you want me to wash it for you? This time it's even healthier. I can't even wash it. Shilu pointed at Qin Guang. Her hands were trembling and her lips were trembling. She couldn't speak for a long time. She didn't expect that Qin Guang would dare to admit it. You don't even know the name of the character you're going to play. And we thought that even if you didn't come to rehearse, you would have at least read the script in private. If you didn't say it yourself, we wouldn't have dared to accept this reality. Can a person really be so unreliable? She was so angry that her eyes were wide open. Her originally fair face had turned bright red because of her anger. The other main cast members also felt their hearts skip a beat. This is so infuriating. We might be acting in a fake drama. Despair. Alright, Yin Fei didn't want to persuade Shilu anymore. She also wanted to see what the most deceitful male lead in history could do. So what did you mean by reminding us that we only have 4 hours to go on stage? What do you mean by placing high hopes on us? Are you trying to make all of us into a joke? Qin Guang. What's going on in your head? Have you lost your mind? Shilu took a step forward and glared at Qin Guang. She felt that there was a ball of fire burning in her chest. He had too much resentment to vent. Qin Guang shrugged. Didn't I just say that I'm taking this matter very seriously? I take this very seriously. Alright, stop fooling around. I have to go look at the script. You guys hurry up and go through it. After saying that, he wanted to leave again. The old man didn't have the time and energy to care about everyone's feelings. Time was a little tight. Rather than wasting my breath here, I might as well go read the script. If I had to painstakingly explain myself to every single person who didn't believe in my abilities, then I would tire myself to death. Shilu was so angry that she laughed. She turned to look at Xianxi. Senior. Director Yang. Look at how sloppy he is. Back then I only came here because of you. How dare he act like this? Xianxi waved his hands. He didn't have the pretentious aura he had in the past 2 days. He forcefully defended himself. Shilu, don't get too worked up. The situation isn't that bad. Qin Guang is really the most talented actor I've ever seen. He's a natural actor. Alright, stop fooling around. Shilu turned to look at the others and steeled her heart. Do you think I'm fooling around? I just don't want my dreams to be humiliated. He's insulting the performing arts. Forget it. I'm not acting anymore. After saying that, she turned to walk out. After taking 2 steps, Yin Fei hurriedly pulled her back. Shilu turned back to look at Qin Guang. She gritted her teeth. Isn't it just a penalty fee? Others might be afraid of you, Qin Guang, but I'm not. I used to have some hope in you, but now I feel like a joke. Goodbye. Shilu broke free from Yin Fei's grip and walked out. Xiaolu, don't be like this. Yin Fei still wanted to stop her. Shilu struggled a bit more and finally managed to escape. It was less than 4 hours before she went on stage. One of the female leads, Shilu, wanted to stop acting. Chapter 951. The other veteran actor Hu Dalin, who played the role of Zhou Xian, also looked at Xianxia with a bitter face, then turned to chase after Xilu. Hu Dalin and Xianxia were good friends. Previously, Xianxia knew that Xilu had a bad temper, so he asked Hu Dalin to help mediate. On the other hand, Hu Dalin had a good relationship with Xilu's uncle, the famous director Xianxia. Before coming here, Xianxia had asked him to help take care of his stubborn but talented niece, so Hu Dalin couldn't turn a blind eye to her. That was how it was in the entertainment circle. It was okay if you had a little temper and a little willfulness, but you couldn't offend people too much. No matter how much Qin Guang went overboard, the contract was signed in black and white, and Qin Guang wasn't a small figure who could be casually manipulated. He was the boss of Tianguang Agency, and even Lu Chao of Luxia culture didn't dare to offend him. He was a figure who had used countless lawyers' letters to make many daring media tremble. He was also the hidden second or third generation who had a mysterious force to protect him when he was being badly defamed. It was so much so that there were people who analyzed that Jin Shiyue, a relative of the entertainment circle with a powerful background, had repeatedly expressed interest in Qin Guang because the two of them were well matched in terms of social status. Otherwise, the grace that Qin Guang had received since his debut would be too grand. Qin Guang's background was too terrifying. No matter how good Xilu's reason was or how unreliable Qin Guang's performance was, the highly anticipated show was about to start, and she couldn't just stop acting. She felt comfortable for a moment, but there would be endless troubles in the future. As an artist, as long as they were involved in a dispute, no matter who was right or wrong or who won or lost in the end, it would be a scandal for no one. Qin Guang was already full of black marks. Even if he made a scene, it seemed that it was nothing. But Xilu, a young girl who had just debuted, couldn't bear such a torment, and Hu Dalin couldn't stay out of it. Yang Xixin caught up to Hu Dalin in a few steps. "Old Hu, please help me hold on." Hu Dalin quickly chased after her while nodding. "No problem, leave it to me." Xiao Lu's temper is a little bad, but in fact, it's because she values this opportunity very much. It won't be a problem to have a good talk. When Hu Dalin was about to leave, he glanced at Qin Guang again. Even though he was a good-natured person, he was a little angry. Returning to Qin Guang's side, Yangxi looked at the others. He couldn't come up with an idea for a while. After thinking for a while, he said, Okay, everyone go and rest first. Hurry up and review the script. It's okay, tonight's scene will definitely come out. If Xiaolu really doesn't come back, I'll just put on makeup and go sing the Four Phoenixes." Qin Guang said, "It's fine. I'll do it. I can act too." "It's dirty." This time the other main creators didn't even bother to roll their eyes. They turned around and ran. They were really afraid that if they continued to stay beside this master, they would want to strangle him like Xilu. "My brother Guang, stop fooling around. What are we going to do this time? Why don't you go up and say some soft words to coax her? Xilu isn't a bad person. She just graduated and hasn't been in the entertainment industry much. She's a little arrogant. Her uncle is Xianxia, a friend of director Deng and also a famous director. You know, after all, she's a second-generation star. Just look at how things are going. If she really decides to quit the show, there's no one more suitable than her. Xilu is really quite talented. I was just saying those words out of anger. This is a drama, not a Beijing opera. How can a man go up and play the role of a woman as the Four Phoenixes?" When almost everyone left, Yangxi turned to look at Qin Guang with a bitter face and tried to persuade him. At the last moment, Xilu, who was playing the important role of the Four Phoenixes, actually wanted to quit in public. As the director, he had a big headache. He looked at Qin Guang with pleading eyes, hoping that this big brother could help him a little. "I know you're capable, but others don't. Let's put away our supernatural powers first, okay?" Qin Guang also hesitated for a moment. Actually, he could quite understand the anger of this little girl named Xilu. But in the end, he didn't say anything. Instead, he patted Yangxi on the shoulder and said, "Brother Yang, don't worry. She won't be able to leave." Yangxi was stunned. "Why?" Qin Guang chuckled. "No reason. Her acting is pretty good, but Monkey Sun can't escape the palm of Buddha's hand. I'm 100% sure that she won't leave." "Huh?" Yangxi's face was blank, but Qin Guang had already turned around to leave. He said, "Brother Yang, I'll leave her to you. I really have to go read the script. Give me 3 hours. I'll memorize the lines of the Four Phoenixes and the original male lead." Just as Qin Guang and Xianxia said, he was sure that Xilu wouldn't really leave. The reason was very simple. Don't be fooled by her angry look. In fact, she had forced herself into this situation. But the moment she turned around to leave, her footsteps were slightly hesitant. In fact, she regretted it as soon as she turned around. This kind of small detail couldn't be noticed by others, but it couldn't be hidden from Qin Guang's eyes. She turned around and walked away as if nothing had happened. Yang Shi and the other mature and charming actress Yin Fei followed her to persuade her, and she would definitely come back. Yang Shi had no choice but to quickly say, "Brother Guang, don't forget. You have to memorize Zhou Ping's lines. You have to play Zhou Ping." Qin Guang turned around and was shocked. And where's the male lead? Why are they all female characters? Yang Shi was about to cry. "My brother. Zhou Ping is a man. It's the eldest young master of the Zhou family." "Oh, I know. In the next moment, Qin Guang disappeared without a trace. On the other side, after waiting for about 7 or 8 minutes, Xilu came back, surrounded by Yin Fei and Hu Delin. "Where's President Qin?" Hu Delin asked Yang Shi, who was sitting in a chair dejectedly while winking at Xilu. Yang Shi looked up and was overjoyed. He thought to himself, Qin Guang is really amazing. How can he know what Xilu is thinking? Is it possible that Qin Guang is as talented in dealing with women as he is in other aspects? He can see through a woman's real thoughts at a glance? The most powerful Casanova in history? That's possible. Yang Shi turned to look at the other side. He's in the dressing room reading the script while doing his makeup. Yin Fei pulled Xilu aside. Let's go over." Xilu struggled. "I'm not going. I'm not wrong. He has just started reading the script. How much can he understand? Even if he really has a photographic memory and can memorize the lines, can he understand Zhou Ping's character?" All right. Xiaolu, have you forgotten what we agreed on? Why are you talking to an old friend again? Do I have to call your uncle?" Hu Delin shouted from the side. Xilu's face stiffened. She looked aggrieved and lowered her head. "Uncle Hu, I'm sorry. I understand." Hu Delin urged. "It's good that you understand. Before things get worse, you should at least apologize to Mr. Qin." Xilu pursed her lips and looked aggrieved. On the other side, Qin Guang was sitting on a chair, holding the script with both hands and reading it attentively. When he saw the script, he remembered that he had acted in Thunderstorm before. However, he had acted in a movie which was different from a play. All in all, since he had acted before, it was easy for him to do so. This was within his original scope of work. Furthermore, ever since he had become a martial sage, his memory had indeed improved greatly. He could recite it without any difficulty. He flipped through the pages as though the wind was blowing, causing the makeup artist to roll her eyes. Xilu and a few others pushed the door open and entered. They saw Qin Guang straightening his back and flipping through the pages. He was so focused and serious. If he had read each page for less than 30 seconds, everyone would have believed that he was memorizing the script. Xilu suppressed her emotions and walked up to Qin Guang. "Mr. Qin, I'm sorry." With that, she bowed her head. Just like what everyone had told her, she had to bear with it until the matter was over. No matter how disgusted, or regretful she was, there was no point in continuing to make a fuss. No matter how much resentment she had, she would have to wait until after tonight. As long as she could endure the 3.5 hours on the stage and come down, she could scold him as much as she wanted. Even if she had offended him to the point of no return, she would still be able to stand her ground. Look, this funny clown is so funny on the stage, but I am still loyal to my contract and completed everything I had to do. It is a pity that I am not a god and I do not have the ability to rely on my own strength to save this failed play. I admit that when I first took on this project, I said that I was doing it for the sake of Senior Yang Shi and Uncle Hu's matchmaking. However, I did not deny that I wanted to ride on his popularity. After all, everyone knew that as long as he was involved in a show, the ratings would be phenomenal. I admit that I was being petty, but no one could stop me from standing up to defend my art. I did not think that things would be so bad. This is the first painful lesson in my life, but I will remember it in the future. Even if Qin Guang really wants to ban me from now on, even if my uncle can't help me, I don't care. If this industry is so lousy, I will not work in this industry in the future. I will do something else. Uncle Hu said something very well just now. You can't blame others for mistakes that they haven't made yet. No matter how lousy Chen Guang is, he hasn't had the time to go on stage. No matter how dissatisfied he is, he can wait until he gets off the stage. Xilu looked straight at Chen Guang. At this moment she felt that she was a great fighter who existed to uphold justice. It was because she wanted to uphold justice and defend the dignity of the performing arts that she lowered her head and apologized to Chen Guang for a short period of time. Now it is like the darkness before dawn. Come on, laugh at me as much as you want, show off as much as you want. In the end, I still have to bow down to the power of the entertainment industry. I will firmly remember your ugly face in my heart. I will use my pen to record everything that happened today. I will let everyone understand how despicable you Chen Guang are. You Chen Guang are a nouveau riche who relied on money to break into the art industry. I will let you know the pain, I will let you pay the price, I will let you become a lesson for future generations, I will let other rich people think twice before they have such crooked thoughts in their minds. In this world, not everything can be bought with money, and not everything can be done just because you have money to gather a group of people to support you. There will always be people who will not suck up to your stinky feet. Chapter 952. Oh, it's okay. It's just a little friction. It's no big deal. I'm not that petty. I understand that you guys have a problem with me. If I were you, I wouldn't be happy either. However, there were some things that were more practical than explaining it once on stage, right? I don't want to ruin my own reputation. You guys might find it hard to understand why I'm like this, but I can tell you very seriously that I won't bring shame to your performance and the classic thunderstorm. To everyone's surprise, Chen Guang, who was sitting on the chair, was extremely magnanimous. Not only did he not stab Xilu in the back, he didn't even raise his head to look at her. Instead, he continued to focus on the script. He didn't stop flipping through the pages, but his mouth was calm as he spoke. Even Hu Delin and Yin Fei were a little confused. When they were persuading Xilu, they discussed how Chen Guang would react. They even emphasized to Xilu again and again that no matter how much he went overboard, she must bear with it and not intensify the conflict. After all, previous events showed that Chen Guang was a very narrow-minded person. After Xilu apologized, she steeled her heart and used her mind to block her ears. She made up her mind that no matter how much this guy went overboard, she would bear with it. But he was actually so magnanimous, like an old man easily forgiving a willful naughty child. This feeling was so strange that it caught people off guard. At this moment, it was Xianxia who reacted quickly and clapped his hands. All right. Since we're clear about this matter, then we won't waste any more time here. Chen Guang, you can look at the script first and we'll go and have a look at the scene. Xianxia signaled to Hu Delin and Yin Fei with his eyes, and the two of them took Xilu outside to smooth things over. From the beginning to the end, the makeup artist who only cared about taking care of Chen Guang looked on coldly from the sidelines. This makeup artist was part of the industry, and he was also one of the staff members behind the scenes of Chen Guang's version of Thunderstorm. He was already familiar with the storm on the internet. It's really pitiful to be a celebrity. They look glamorous on the outside, but they're actually very wronged in private. Just like Hu Delin, Yin Fei and Xilu, the leading actors of the drama, they had a bit of fame, but in the end, they were dragged by Chen Guang to accompany the crown prince to study, and they even had to lower their heads in front of him. With the frequency at which he flipped through the book, would he be able to get into it? It would be strange if he could remember his lines. He's just putting on an act for you to see. Before you came in, he had already been rummaging for a few minutes. What the makeup artist didn't expect was that Chen Guang spent 2.5 hours in disguise. Boss Chen, aren't you getting too into character? I'm just an inconspicuous makeup artist. What are you playing at? Are you putting on an act for me to see? Wait a minute. He couldn't have fallen for me, right? But I'm already in my 40s. Isn't that a little too old? Youngsters nowadays like mature types. But I'm a man. However, Chen Guang couldn't be bothered about what this crazy makeup artist was thinking. After his makeup was done, he changed his clothes and walked out. He changed into a Republic of China-style suit. Although there was something wrong with his brain, he had a pretty good makeup artist's finishing touch. It made him look a little more mature and less immature. He really did look like a young master from the Republic of China. When Chen Guang went outside, Xianxia was pulling one main cast member after another to go through the key points of the play. Those who weren't checked by Xianxia were lowering their heads and reading the script. Although everyone present had acted in Thunderstorm more than once, And they were still learning from the past. This was a 3.5-hour-long performance of 5 acts. If they forgot their lines halfway through, the effect of the performance would definitely be greatly reduced, even if they had a teleprompter hidden in their ears. Although not many people felt that they could last until the second act, just like what Xilu thought, no matter how unreliable the male lead was, they would do their best and leave the rest to fate. Anyway, if something went wrong, it couldn't be their fault. The amount of people scolding Qin Guang online also reached its peak in the afternoon, especially the news that Xilu had stopped acting and was pulled back. No one knew who in the production team had secretly spread the news, but it poured oil on the fire. The situation was out of control. Mango TV, which had bought the live broadcast rights, even held an emergency meeting to discuss whether they should prepare 2 backup programs in advance. This was a national live broadcast. If they couldn't continue acting, they had to cut off the signal in time and change the program. If it was possible, it would be best to discuss with Tianguang's agent to see if they could adjust the license price of the live broadcast rights according to the broadcast time of the program. After all, if they spent a lot of money to buy the copyright only to be broadcast for less than 10 minutes, it would be too much. The manager of a certain business department of Mango TV, who was in charge of the operation, was scolded by the station's higher-ups. How could he be so stupid as to transfer the full amount in one go? Why didn't he sign a floating clause when he signed the contract? The manager was so aggrieved that his eyes were filled with tears. That wasn't what you said when you asked me to talk to you. At that time you said that I must get it at all costs. Our satellite TV has already lost step by step in the competition. This is a rare opportunity. We must make a beautiful comeback. All of you clearly agreed to the terms, but now you want me to be the scapegoat? He braced himself and looked for the manager of Tianguang's business department, Fong Tianyu, to discuss changing the contract. In the end, the other party's reply was only 2 words. Her. What was worse was that he had offended someone. Fong Tianyu had perfectly implemented Qin Guang's principle of being a person. He must not be at a disadvantage. At that time, Fong Tianyu's original words were like this. I've long heard that your station is famous for changing your mind at the last minute. I didn't believe it, but now I believe it. Yo, are you bullying us because of your big business? Where did your spirit of the contract go? Changing a good contract just like that? Do you think we're pushovers? Come on, I know you have your difficulties, but you guys are a little too dishonest in this matter. Let me tell you, if you only call me if Xiao Chen finds out about your station's intentions in the future when your station broadcasts news simulcast, if there are any scenes of Xiao Chen, all of you will have to censor it. Director Chen can turn your station into a parallel universe's Mango TV. Do you understand? Then Fong Tianyu hung up the phone. Lu Xiaoyang, who had just rushed back, asked nervously, Old Fong, can we handle it by acting so pretentiously? Fong Tianyu patted Lu Xiaoyang on the shoulder. Old Lu, we're feeling bitter. If I wasn't so strong-willed, those people who signed the contract with us would have turned into hungry wolves and bitten me to death. As Fong Tianyu said that, his sharp eyes saw a familiar figure appear at the backstage entrance of the theater. Damn, Director Chong from Bamboo is here. I'll hide for a while. This is Director Chen's acquaintance. I can't get hard. This Director Chong was naturally brother Little Chong. Hey Manager Fong. Don't hide. I'm not here to cause trouble. Little Chong's sharp eyes quickly chased after him. Fong Tianyu patted his chest. Director Chong, next time you should inform me first. You scared me to death. You don't know, but recently I have to go to the basement to go home. People are blocking my way. That's because those people have no foresight. They don't believe in Brother Guang's ability. I have full confidence in him. Manager Fong, just follow Brother Guang's example and blacklist those sponsors and broadcasters who have been causing trouble recently. They'll regret it later. Chang Xiaozong was indeed someone who had followed Qin Guang and made a name for himself. He was very confident. Fong Tianyu sighed. How can we blacklist a salesperson? We can't have enemies forever. We can only have profits forever. Manager Fong, I think you're a good person. You're a talent. Come to work at Bamboo. I don't dare. I'm afraid Director Chen will strangle me to death. On the other side, Yangshi was still acting seriously. Everyone, keep your spirits up. Go through your scenes in your head. Uncle Hu, adjust your collar. Zhou Xian is someone who cares a lot about appearance. Yes. Sister Yin Fei is indeed experienced. That's how Fan Yi should be. There's a hint of charm in her eyes, but not too much. Unknowingly, everyone's emotions were stirred up by Xianxia. Thunderstorm, which was supposed to be on the verge of being overdone, suddenly became a huge mountain in everyone's heart. Everyone had the same thought. This was all because of the male lead who was flipping through the script from the beginning again. It was Qin Guang who was going to play Zhou Ping. It was 6:30 p.m. in the evening. The small theater that could only accommodate a few hundred people was gradually filled up. From time to time, the main cast in the backstage would hear the hustle and bustle of people outside. When they turned to look at Qin Guang, who was still flipping through the script, they couldn't help but feel strange. No matter how much of a scammer he was, no one could deny his popularity. There weren't many people who could make a small theater play this popular. Moreover, this was a play that had already been performed countless times. It was almost impossible to perform anything new. It could only be compared to the classics and find all sorts of faults. In recent years, very few film crews would choose to act in Thunderstorm. Firstly, the Republic of China drama was a bit too old. The audience was tired of it. Secondly, it was strenuous and unrewarding. Everyone thought to themselves, perhaps our situation is not bad. Even if we can't be immortalized, we can at least be infamous for thousands of years. We can't perform the best thunderstorm, but at least we have a chance to perform the worst thunderstorm in history. This is also an achievement, right? Finally, under the gaze of tens of millions of TV and computer viewers, and under the gaze of hundreds of people in the small theater, the lights dimmed and the curtains on the stage slowly opened. The brown carved wooden door creaked open with a very historical and heavy creak. Qin Guang's version of Thunderstorm was officially on stage. Chapter 953. The small theater was completely silent. Both the audience and the staff of Tianguang Agency were paying full attention to the stage. Even Big Beard Deng, who was thousands of miles away in Beijing, gave himself a rare holiday. He pulled a few of the production crew members to sit in front of the TV, just to watch Qin Guang's drama, which had almost become a farce. He did not dare to pull the other main actors, for fear that Qin Guang's performance on the stage would make the other actors not want to continue filming and they would quit. Big Beard Deng had a headache. He hoped that Qin Guang would learn to act well. If possible, it would be best to send him to the CCTV or Chinese drama school to sharpen his skills. But obviously Qin Guang would not be so obedient. This young man, whose identity was getting more and more special, did not have the time and schedule. He seemed to be busier than a big director like him, but he was busy with something that ordinary people were not qualified to ask about. But I did not expect you to play it so big. You challenged the most difficult live drama the moment you came, and you even said it would be broadcasted to the whole country. Why don't you go to heaven? Why are you so daring? There were 100 actors who could act in front of the camera, but there were probably less than 10 who could complete the whole drama. Although drama actors were not famous and their income might not be as high as movie stars, everyone knew that the drama stage was the real place to train people. Currently, the recognized acting school in the country, the old artists who were famous among the people, all had experience in drama. I say, Director Deng, I still feel unsure. Isn't that obvious? I'm not sure either. What if he messes up? It's one thing for him to lose his reputation, but what about our movie? We haven't even finished filming and his reputation is already ruined. Can we replace him? Big Beard felt a headache coming on. Replace him? What a joke. This drama was originally tailor-made for Jiang Yage. If Qin Guang did not act and Jiang Yage also quit, then who would take the role? The main cast has been completely replaced? Also, don't forget that Qin Guang, Jiang Yage and Jin Shuiwei are the main investors in this movie. Qianda Pictures only has 10% of the shares. That's right, we can't change our boss. Sighed Director Deng, it's been hard on you. It's fine. I was the one who chose him back then, so I admit it. Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Let's watch the TV and see what Qin Guang can do. The plot of the play on TV had already begun to move forward. At the beginning of the prologue and the first act, Qin Guang did not have any scenes. Although the other actors on the stage were hastily prepared, they were still professional actors with high standards. Thus, they were able to act according to the rules. Assistant Yang's standard is getting better and better. I didn't expect him to be able to do this in less than a week. Jiang Yage, who was also in front of the TV, commented with great interest. Jin Shuiwei nodded and said, I just saw the news on the internet that Shi Lu, who plays the Four Phoenixes, lost her temper with Chen Guang in the afternoon. Looks like she has some real skills. Jiang Yage continued to comment. Hu Delin's Zhou Xian is also quite good. He hasn't even shown his face yet, but those 2 lines are enough to make him look old-fashioned. Jin Shuiwei shook her head and said, I think Hu Delin is a bit too strong. I didn't expect the veteran actor to be a bit nervous. Jiang Yage threw a small tomato into her mouth and chewed it. She said in a muffled voice, It's all because of our dear Guang. You can't say that. Although they are acting well now, Thunderstorm is indeed a bit old. If it wasn't for Qin Guang, I'm afraid many people would have changed the channel. There wouldn't be so much attention. Jiang Yage snorted and said, I understand that, but it's not a good thing to have so much attention. It's also because we really can't make time. Otherwise we would really be the ones to do it. I'm quite embarrassed to see these people bring so much trouble to him. Jin Shuiwei also blushed slightly. She thought to herself that she did feel a little sorry for them. In the small theater, the bald president who was sitting among the crowd yawned loudly. Seeing this, the vice president beside him muttered softly, It's a bit boring. Isn't that so? We have such a hardcore fan group but only a few of us came. We don't have the prestige we used to have. T fans my ass. You are the fans. I'm a hate fan of Qin Guang. The most determined hate fan of Qin Guang. Mr. President, can we accept our fate? Just admit it. Admit what? Admit that you're already a fan of Qin Guang. Isn't that what the internet is saying? Tui. I can be his fan. I can't wait to bite him to death. All right. The vice president really felt sorry for this stubborn president. Can't we be a little more honest? As the prologue passed, the first act slowly progressed. Yang Shi, who was backstage, looked at his watch from time to time. He was getting more and more nervous. Qin Guang, are you ready? When Zhou Chong starts to talk about why he's still not married, you start to walk forward. Then when Fanny starts to lower her head and murmur, who knows, you have to walk to the door. At that time Zhou Chong will look back at you and say, Hey, big brother is here. At that time your scene will start. You must remember, when you're acting as Zhou Ping, you can't be like your usual majestic gait. You have to slow down a little. When you enter the door you have to act very sleepy and yawn. Qin Guang tilted his head and looked at Yang Shi for a long time, not saying a word. Yang Shi suddenly paused, the corner of his mouth twitching. Sorry, I was a little too nervous and forgot. Why am I telling you all this? Bro, did you really remember the script? Qin Guang put down the notebook. Brother Yang, I really did. Really? If you keep talking nonsense I'll have to hit you. Yang Shi shrunk his neck and dodged to the side. He secretly mocked himself. I'm in a mental block. Why am I explaining the script to him? As long as he can remember the script, he's a true master. Does he need to waste his breath on his understanding of the character? At this time, there's no point in continuing to ask him about this. Anyway, it's a knife to my head. I'll just leave the rest to him. At this time, Fan Yi's actor Yin Fei was working hard to maintain her performance on stage with Zhou Chong. Everyone knew that Qin Guang was about to come on stage. Perhaps as soon as he got on stage and started to stutter, this show would be over, right? But there's no point in worrying about this now. I'll just take care of my own business first. Perhaps it was because of distracting thoughts in her mind. Yin Fei almost stuttered when she said her lines, causing Yang Shi, who was in the audience, to jump up and down in anxiety. What is Yin Fei doing? She's a veteran actor. How can she make such a mistake on stage? Sigh. Yang Shi felt a little regretful after only watching the first half of the opening. If he had known earlier, he would have suggested to Qin Guang to change the script. Forcing himself to challenge Thunderstorm was a bit too much. So far, the actors on stage had only performed average. They hadn't been able to perform anything special or innovative, which made him feel very disappointed. It was difficult to surpass a classic, not to mention that he didn't have much time left. He really didn't have the ability to rehearse over and over again, polishing and adjusting everyone's state to the state he wanted. The actors were also focused on stability on stage and didn't dare to have any off-topic performance. They didn't want to make any mistakes, but they didn't want to make any contributions. If this was just a small show on a small stage, their performance would still be above the standard. But this was a nationally broadcast play that received a lot of attention. Not to mention the people in the theater, there were countless people all over the country who were pointing at the screen and talking about it. For the past Chen Guang, mediocrity was failure. For the classic Thunderstorm, which had been brought to the stage time and time again, if it couldn't come up with something innovative, people would say that it was relying on its predecessor's legacy to cheat people's money. The more familiar a classic was, the easier it was to be compared. Once a comparison was made, people would nitpick. No matter how small a flaw was, it would be magnified infinitely in the eyes of others. Some were obviously very good improvisation and innovation, but it would also be covered up by others' preconceived impressions. Sigh, it's too late to regret now. Xianxia was in a daze when Chen Guang, who was beside him, suddenly strode forward. Xianxia was stunned at first, then suddenly came back to his senses. It was Chen Guang's turn. He was actually lost in thought. He hurriedly turned back to call the others. Make the best use of this last bit of time and think of a way to sculpt if he could. He pulled Hu Delin, who was about to go on stage. Uncle Hu. Hu Delin understood his thoughts in a second and waved his hands. Director Yang, don't count on me. I only have this little ability, I can't lead the others. In fact, a veteran actor like Hu Delin could handle the situation at the critical moment, but he felt that he did not have the fighting spirit. Although he had been helping Xianxia with Shilu's work, this was only his duty as a senior. He really did not have the determination to put his life on the line and forcefully lead the others, even at the risk of failing miserably in an easy task. Xianxia sighed and turned to look in the direction of the stage. Chen Guang was about to enter. Zhou Chong and Fan Yi were discussing why Zhou Ping was still not married. Up until now, Chen Guang hadn't said a word. He was also facing the stage with his face sideways. Yin Fei and Zhou Chong's actors couldn't even see his expression clearly. However, his simple steps had the feeling of anticipation in Xianxia's heart, and even exceeded it. He portrayed the image of a dispirited young master of the Republic of China who was in low spirits and had a heavy heart. Others had no confidence in Chen Guang and couldn't understand the mood, but Xianxia understood that Chen Guang was already in character. Xianxia's breath stopped for a moment. It's coming. As long as Chen Guang can remember the lines, there won't be a problem. Xianxia gripped the walkie-talkie in his hand tightly. If he forgot the lines, he would quickly remind him. Director Yang, Chen Guang's earphones. At this moment, the floor supervisor walked up with a pale face, holding a pocket-sized bone conduction earphone in his hand. Xianxia's face turned pale. Oh my god. This guy isn't wearing earphones. It's over. On the other side, Chen Guang raised his head slightly, opened his mouth and raised his hand slightly, covering his mouth with his fair palm. Zhou Chong smiled stiffly. Brother. Actually, he should be smiling naturally. Zhou Chong was a very simple and upright person, and he had a very good relationship with his half-brother, Zhou Ping. Chen Guang looked up, his slightly hazy eyes regaining some clarity. He nodded slightly. You're here. That's the smell. Xianxia listened to Chen Guang's slightly tired but intimate "you're here" through the earphone. His heart almost stopped and his breathing completely stopped. In a haze, he seemed to have returned to that coffee shop, watching Chen Guang transform into the angry Muhammad Ali, leaping in front of him like a butterfly. At this moment he looked so natural and he seemed to fit in with the surrounding folk style of the setting. Even his voice had changed, becoming a little low and hoarse. A simple greeting to his brother had imperceptibly played out Zhou Ping's many thoughts. Chapter 954. Hu Delin's eyes widened as he glanced at the stage, then at the security camera behind him. What's going on? Why do I feel like he's blended in with his surroundings? Xianxia didn't reply to Hu Delin and continued to watch quietly. On the stage, Chen Guang's voice sounded. Suddenly, Yin Fei felt an inexplicable sense of resentment. Ping. She felt indignant. She felt that Zhou Ping was purposely avoiding her. She didn't even look at her when she came in and only cared about greeting Zhou Chong. Chen Guang turned to look at her. Oh. Then he paused. His throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton and he didn't know what to say. He lowered his head evasively. From the details in the security camera, Zhou Ping's gaze drifted slightly towards Zhou Chong. It was very subtle. All of this took a long time to describe, but it was a small detail that took less than 3 or 4 seconds. He shifted his feet slightly, pretending to shake off the non-existent dust on his shoes. Then he looked up at Fan Yi and said, You're here too. Fan Yi's gaze drifted slightly towards Zhou Cheng. After making sure that Zhou Cheng wasn't looking at her, she looked up slightly and said, I just came down. As she said this simple line, her gaze drifted, but she secretly gave Zhou Ping a sense of resentment. Her tone hid a coquettish pout that only lovers could understand. She seemed to be resentful. Why are you avoiding me? Why do you want to leave? It was a simple sentence, but it hid a lot of complicated things in the past. But at the same time, she had to be wary of Zhou Cheng and not let him see through her. This desire to speak, full of hidden bitterness, this shameful act of stealing chickens and dogs, was all hidden in the words I just came downstairs. Qin Guang's body trembled slightly when he heard Fan Yi's words. His stiff movement was caught by the high-definition security camera, but it also happened to avoid Zhou Cheng's attention. He deliberately turned his head and asked Zhou Cheng, Father didn't go out, did he? Qin Guang purposely paused after the word father, as if to answer Fan Yi's complaint, to express his own confusion and to warn Fan Yi. This was still a secret hidden between the two of them, a secret that only they could understand. But Zhou Cheng didn't seem to notice. He turned to look in the direction of the study before replying, No, are you going to see him? Hu Delin, who was behind the scenes, was so excited that he couldn't speak. When the young man turned his head just now, there was no accent at the back. This is really a stroke of genius. Xianxia also said. Also, when Yin Fei said, go downstairs earlier, that almost imperceptible tremble in her voice was simply too amazing. Director Yang, have you noticed that Yin Fei and the others are completely immersed in their roles? It's completely different from its previous state. Hu Delin said excitedly, We've been rehearsing for a few days, but she's never been so immersed in the role. Xianxia nodded. That's right. They're already in the middle of the movie and can't get out. He knew exactly what was going on. This was what was truly terrifying about Qin Guang. When he was immersed in the role, there would be an invisible realm with him as the center, completely enveloping the people and things around him. He could attach a layer of the soul of an era to lifeless scenes and props, and he could even make the people around him completely lose themselves. Their souls would involuntarily overlap with the character they were about to play, allowing the character's true self to completely overwhelm the actor's true self. This was probably what he meant by world-class acting. A world of its own. Xianxia had no idea how Qin Guang did it, but he was absolutely certain that it was the truth. Qin Guang never bragged, but when it came to acting he was really amazing beyond imagination. Xianxia would never understand that Qin Guang was able to achieve such an achievement in acting because he had lived in the world of acting countless times and reached the highest realm that only others could achieve. He could use his seemingly subtle movements, his exquisite micro-expressions, and his small movements that were so vivid that people couldn't tell if it was a play or a real life, to control everything around him. His voice, which seemed to have a magical charm, and even the frequency of the vibration of his vocal cords, could completely merge himself with the role, and then ruthlessly extract the role from the story, turning it into real life and covering his stage. Yin Fei and Zhou Cheng's actors couldn't understand the secret behind it, but it didn't matter. The moment Qin Guang opened his mouth, they were pulled into the realm of world-class acting. They didn't realize it at all, but they had already lost themselves as if they had been possessed by the character in the movie. This wasn't because of Qin Guang's terrifying hypnosis ability, but because actors like them were trying their best to act as someone else in their subconscious. What Qin Guang did was to use his world-class acting skills to influence others, to maximize the subconscious of the actors, so that they could completely change from acting as someone else. While Xianxia was in a daze, Hu Delin, who was next to him, bowed his head and frowned. It wouldn't be long before it was his turn to go on stage. After witnessing Qin Guang's performance with his own eyes, Hu Delin, a veteran actor, had been unknowingly brought into the role. At this moment he was no longer himself. He had become the mine owner Zhou Xian, who was still annoyed and depressed by the recent strike in his own mine, and was also having a headache about his good-for-nothing eldest son. Xianxia and Hu Delin weren't the only ones who were truly shocked. The eyes of the hundreds of people in the small theater who had been yawning lit up when Qin Guang appeared. Some people wanted to see him make a fool of himself, some were afraid that their idol would be embarrassed, and some had an indifferent attitude. In their hearts they had already sentenced Qin Guang's version of thunderstorm to death. This was just a boring copy of a classic. Whether or not Qin Guang could continue acting, this play was just a ridiculous play by a local tycoon. It couldn't leave any trace in the history of art. Perhaps in the future, it would become a topic of conversation and a laughing stock. Although the actors on stage were professional, they were very reserved. They were just copying everything from the past and there was nothing new. They even began to whisper rudely under the stage, just like the bald president and vice president. There were even some people who didn't like the play and were just here to watch the fun, thinking of leaving. Until Qin Guang appeared, everything seemed to change in an instant. On the stage in the style of the Republic of China, the exquisitely made props became dimmer without warning, giving people a strong sense of simplicity. Even the stage lights became gray, as if they were looking at an old painting that had been stored for 20 or 30 years. But what really changed was the state of the actors on stage. Fan Yi's cheating failed, and as a stepmother she cheated on Zhou Ping. Now she was facing the fate of being hated and abandoned. The complicated pouting and resentment when she spoke to Zhou Ping instantly made the hearts of those who understood the play race. This was a completely different state from before. Even those who didn't understand the play were aroused by her soft words. Big Beard Deng stood up from the sofa. He still had a cigarette in his mouth and the lighter in his hand was still emitting orange flames. His beard was almost burnt, but he didn't seem to notice. Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue, who were originally curled up lazily on the sofa, had already sat up straight. Their bodies were stiff as they stared at the TV, blinking their eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Unlike others, Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue had known Qin Guang for a long time, and they had seen Qin Guang's tragedy on the set of Tears for a Country Will Run. But they weren't like Yang Shi, who had seen how Qin Guang used his perfect performance to prove himself. Their view of Qin Guang was still stuck at the level where he could make the whole screen suffer from the cancer of embarrassment. So Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue were originally like Big Beard Deng, the most firm representatives who believed that Qin Guang's acting was not reliable. But what did they see now? What an incredible scene. Yin Fei was completely taken in by his performance. Although Yin Fei wasn't particularly famous in the circle, she was considered a veteran in the field of drama. In the past, Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue had seen Yin Fei's performance live. They knew that this veteran was limited by talent. Although she was diligent enough, her overall level had stagnated and she couldn't improve. In the acting industry, although more learning, more practice and more thinking could make up for the lack of standards to a certain extent, it was still an industry that relied on talent. Everyone could act, but whether they could perform the desired effect in front of the camera or on the stage, to the extent that it didn't feel like they were acting, depended on whether the performer could understand the requirements of the director and the script, feel the state of the character and perform it perfectly. Some people needed to deliberate painstakingly, but some only needed to look at the script, find a corner to think about, ponder and completely grasp the state of mind of the character. This was talent. After all, the upper limit of a person's level on the stage was determined by their talent. Yin Fei was a qualified and competent actress, and she was very talented among ordinary people. But she was not young anymore and her upper limit was already there. Otherwise she would have become famous a long time ago. Unless she was able to encounter some kind of life experience that allowed her to gain enlightenment, it was impossible for her level to change too much in a short period of time. But now Yin Fei looked so talented and dazzling on the stage. In the eyes of ordinary people they saw the role of Fan Yi. But in the eyes of professionals like Jin Shiyue, Jiang Yage or Big Beard Deng, they saw the actress Yin Fei herself. There was only one explanation: Yin Fei was influenced by someone else and she was brought into the play by someone else. It was impossible to play the role of Shou Cheng. Although this young man was a talented senior in school, many of his juniors were envious of him because of this and that. He performed poorly in this play. Sometimes Yin Fei had to guide him and he barely managed to stay in the play. As for the others, Shi Lu, who had already appeared on the stage, didn't have this ability. Although she did her job well, when it came to driving Yin Fei in the play she was still miles away. The other passers-by, the old people and children at the opening, Lu Gui, Lu Dehai, and Hu Delin, who only had a few lines but never showed his face, didn't have this ability. There was only one explanation, and it must be Qin Guang, who was also on the stage at this time. He was like a bright lamp, illuminating the whole stage, and the people and things that were shrouded in his light were forcibly pulled out of this world. and returned to the story described in the novel, which happened 100 years ago. The medium-sized stage was still there and it was still on the television, but time seemed to flow backward in that part of the world. That was the world of Thunderstorm. That was Chao Yu's world. That was also Qin Guang's world. The people in the play all came to life, and what we saw was not the play but the life of the people in the play. Chapter 955. When the first act finally came to an end and the 3.5-hour-long play came to a short rest, the audience was silent. Everyone's mind was constantly replaying the countless details of the first act that had just been played out. The drama lovers who had already watched Thunderstorm were wondering why they had never realized that Thunderstorm had so many connotations. After watching today's first act, they felt that the movie version and the live version of the drama that they had watched before were not even worth mentioning. The audience who came purely for Qin Guang had no understanding of Thunderstorm before, but this did not stop them from being completely immersed in it. As a classic that had been selected as a textbook, although not many people had seen this play, almost everyone knew the name of this classic. It was just that the predecessors thought that these were antiques that could not keep up with the times and belonged to the old things that had already been eliminated, so they were not interested in them. But because they had never seen it before, this time they felt it particularly deeply. Only then did they understand that the old things that they had always been against had such meanings. Although they were just watching a play, they experienced the extremely real sadness and joy of the people in the play. As for the backstage, the actors who had appeared on the stage in the first act were all sitting quietly in a corner, no one talking to anyone. Until now, these people still had not left the play. The complicated personality child Zhou Ping was still sitting there, as if wherever he went the world of Thunderstorm would cover that place. Even Yang Shi, who was supposed to seize the time to talk to others about the play, subconsciously wanted to find a pipe and put it in his mouth. He himself had unknowingly returned to that era, and had become a passerby living in the play. He had completely forgotten his duty, and the others had completely forgotten to review the script. But this was actually meaningless because these actors had even forgotten who they were. When they stood on the stage in that scene and environment, they did not need any memory, they would naturally say the lines that their character and position required. On the stage they were not just copying simple lines. Their entire thinking had completely become that of the characters in the original Thunderstorm written by Chao Yu. After a short break, the second act continued. It was not only the Wujing Theater that was quiet, but also countless audiences in front of their TVs and computers all over the country. She had originally planned to watch a farce, but she had never imagined that she would actually find true emotion in this farce. The more sensitive audience members couldn't help but put themselves in the shoes of the audience. The more rational audience was surprised. They were particularly puzzled. They had seen so many classic movies and TV shows over the years, but never had they been so deeply touched by the screen on that small square stage like today. Was it because he had become more emotional, or was it the aftereffect of accidentally drinking too much coffee before getting off work? It was undeniable that Qin Guang's acting was really good. It was perfect, beyond imagination, and impeccable. But in the end, this was just a play. Alright, don't let your imagination run wild. The second act has begun. The audience once again focused their attention on the screen. Before he knew it, the second act had ended. The third and fourth act. The stage was in chaos because of Xifeng and Zhou Chang's deaths and Zhou Ping's suicide. Everyone knew that this seemingly chaotic scene was a story acted out by the actors. It was clearly a stage that had been set up, but everyone still felt that what they saw was really happening. The chaos on the stage formed a strong contrast with the quietness off the stage. Everyone clenched their fists tightly and held their breath. Xiao Tsong forgot to look down at the latest online number sent by the company's group chat. The PD in charge of the live broadcast of Mango TV forgot to direct the cut. The employees of Tingguang Agency also forgot to cheer for their boss's perfect performance. Big Beard Deng had long forgotten his worries at the beginning of the play. Although he was not completely immersed in the play like others, he had, after all, directed Thunderstorm when he was young. Compared to others, he could use a calmer and more professional gaze to judge today's play. But now he felt that he didn't need to say anything. Qin Guang's version of Thunderstorm had already completely surpassed all the classics of the past, and even surpassed his own inexperienced work when he was young. Big Beard knew that this was not Xianxi's credit. It was all because of Qin Guang's perfect performance. Before Qin Guang appeared on the stage, today's thunderstorm was at best a young director's passable work. The rehearsal time was only a short week. This was already the result of Xianxia and several other leading actors' perfect performance. They couldn't ask for more. But the moment Qin Guang appeared on the stage, the play was completely sublimated. Qin Guang made this stage play follow the script, but it was higher than the script. He asked Chao Yu to write a script that was higher than life. Big Beard Deng leaned back and reached out to ask Old Ma, the stage manager next to him, for a cigarette. He lit it and took a deep breath. He, who had quit smoking for too long, accidentally coughed and tears fell from the corners of his eyes. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and said, "I finally understand what little Yang told me before." Old Ma asked, "What did Xiao Yang say?" "He said that Qin Guang was born to be an actor." Old Ma wanted to nod subconsciously, but he immediately remembered, "But when he acted in Jiangshan last time." Big Beard Deng thought for a moment and said, "You can probably understand it this way. Einstein was not born to solve calculus. Although Qin Guang is a genius, he has never been exposed to acting before he acted in Jiangshan, so it makes sense that it was difficult for him to get started at that time. But then he suddenly completed it perfectly, didn't he? At the time I thought that he had finally hit the jackpot, so I quickly passed it. Now that I think about it, he probably used only 2 or 3 hours to completely awaken from a newbie who didn't know how to act at all into a real top-notch actor." Old Ma nodded. "The younger generation will surpass us in time." Big Beard shook his head again. "No, not every younger generation has Qin Guang's ability. It's not that the younger generation is surpassing us in time, but that our level is too low to understand a real genius." Old Ma asked, "Director Deng, it's okay that my level is low, but you can't be low too, right?" Big Beard Deng smiled bitterly. "I'll take Einstein as an example. His primary school math teacher can't compare with him, right?" Old Ma didn't say anything more. Big Beard had no problem mocking himself, so there was no need for him to add another stab to his wound. As a well-known director, he should be able to tell whether a person had the talent to become an actor or not with a few glances. However, Big Beard had questioned Qin Guang for so long, which was simply damaging to his reputation. In the West Mountain villas, Jiang Yage and Jin Shuyue were also staring with their eyes wide open. No one could understand the incomparable regret in their hearts. If they had known that Qin Guang had this ability, even if they had to stop filming in Yanjing, they would have gone to Wujing to act with him. As for those haters who had slandered Qin Guang online or in their social circles, they were still breaking their promises this time. Those who had bet with their colleagues had already begun to think of a reason to skip work tomorrow. They would hide for as long as they could. Those who had bet with their classmates took out their mobile phones and planned to send a text message to their teachers to find a way to ask for sick leave. As for those who had bet with their wives or others, they didn't even have a place to hide. These days, there were all kinds of media outlets that had published articles questioning and criticizing Qin Guang on the internet. The fast ones had already published a new draft, while the slow ones were gnashing their teeth and writing. There was no doubt that the limelight of these media outlets didn't need to be looked at. They must have made a 180-degree turn. The media had never cared about moral integrity. They would follow the direction of the wind and write the draft. It didn't matter if they were scolded as fence-sitters. As long as what was written was enough to attract attention, who would care about face? Finally, under the attention of thousands of people, Xianxia walked out from the backstage. He led all the main cast members and gently bowed to the audience below the stage. This scene of the most high-profile stage play in the past 10 years officially ended. At this time, Xianxia didn't have the mood to care about the cheers of the audience below. He was just glad that his choice to bite the bullet and come to Wujing from Yanjing was not wrong. Even if the one who could let people remember today's thunderstorm must be Qin Guang. And when people mention today in the future, they will only say that this is Qin Guang's version of thunderstorm. But it doesn't matter. No one can change the fact that the director is me. I was finally able to hitch a ride with Qin Guang just like Chairman Chong from Bamboo. Although there were many flaws at the beginning of the first act, no one can change the fact that this will be the most classic thunderstorm in history. In the small theater, even though all the main cast members had left after the curtain call, and everyone knew that this kind of show would not have an encore, hundreds of audience members still stood up and applauded for a long time. Feng Tianyu finally came back to his senses and clapped heavily. I knew President Chen would definitely be fine. Lu Xiaoyang, who was beside him, rolled his eyes. You knew again? That's not what you said before. Feng Tianyu snorted. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. When did I ever doubt President Chen's ability? But you were clearly cursing him in your heart. You're framing me. You despicable person, don't even think about fighting for favor with me. You said it. You've said that shameless word at last. President Chang, he just said the word fighting for favor, right? You heard it, right? Chang Xiaotsong, who was at the side, was speechless towards Qin Guang's two subordinates who had no moral integrity but were quite capable. Sure enough, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Like boss-like employee. Isn't this a bit inappropriate? Forget it, Qin Guang doesn't know anyway. Chapter 956. Chang Xiaotsong finally had the mood to look at the online viewer report from the company. After reading it, he grinned again. Although the number of viewers did not exceed the previous peak, which was less than 17 million, the proportion of new registered users was extremely high, more than 30%. This meant that in just one night Bamboo had nearly 6 million new registered users. This was much higher than the number of viewers during Qin Guang's previous live broadcasts. To achieve this number through advertising, they would have to spend at least hundreds of millions of yuan. However, this was only the power of Qin Guang's nuclear weapon tonight. At the same time, the number of viewers in Qin Guang's personal live broadcast room increased to 1.6 million. Including the slow increase previously, it had reached 6.7 million. This was an unparalleled number of viewers in the world. Chang Xiaotsong analyzed that the reason for this phenomenon should be that the skills Qin Guang displayed this time were different from the past. It was a performance ability that he had never really dabbled in before. This officially transformed him from an atypical internet celebrity to an artistic star. This time he not only attracted those fans who only wanted to see strange things, but also those who usually paid more attention to movies, TV shows, or variety shows in the entertainment circle were also attracted to him. The target audience had changed, which directly led to the increase in the number of new registered users. Xiaotsong could not help but secretly feel lucky. Fortunately, he believed in his brother's ability as always and did not hesitate to offer a price of 10 million. Although some of his competitors also offered the same price, he still managed to snatch it by relying on his relationship with his old partner. Mango reckoned that they had also made a lot of money. Just based on the advertisements they aired during the breaks in between, the 11 million they invested in the licensing fee was more than enough to cover their capital. However, they would definitely regret it later. Feng Tianyu had learned to be very petty from Qin Guang. He would definitely complain to Qin Guang about Mango's intention to go back on their word. It would be difficult for them to take advantage of this in the future. Xiaotsong's guess was right. At this time, the upper management of Mango were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Who would have thought that Qin Guang's weekly drama could be so perfect? At the end of the show, the ratings even broke 5%. It was even more popular than the finale of the TV station's Ace variety show. One had to know that there was almost no pre-publicity effect. In the past, whenever Mango TV wanted to do a variety show, it would be bombarded with advertisements a few months before it started broadcasting. If they had the same time this time, it would be too good to be true. But now they couldn't be happy, and it was even more awkward. If it was just a normal success, they wouldn't feel any pressure. However, the real-time statistics were so shocking. Their previous attempt to break the contract was ruined. The job of repairing the relationship fell to the manager who had called Feng Tianyu. At this moment, he who had just finished watching a play on the television, just wanted to sing a song. Why are my eyes filled with tears? Because I love this land too deeply. My fate is even worse than the people in the movie. At least those people could still fight and fight. At least Zhou Ping had the courage to take a bullet. I could only cower. Don't talk to me. From now on, I'm going to roam the pugilistic world. My nickname is Scapegoat. No one cared how miserable the manager of Mango TV was at this moment, but there were so many people backstage in the small theater who were also extremely embarrassed. At this moment, Qin Guang was sitting lazily in the dressing room, letting the stupid makeup artist help him remove his makeup. Sitting next to him were a few lead actors who were removing their makeup. These people were so excited that their faces were flushed. They had no idea what had happened to them. They had been acting well, but they had suddenly become completely different people. Now that the curtain had fallen, they had finally left the show. However, every bit of what had happened on the stage was clearly engraved in their minds. They could understand it themselves without anyone telling them. They had really completed an unbelievable performance. It was as if they had become someone else and lived again. Although the time was short, it was deeply remembered. This was a precious experience that was enough to make their acting skills qualitatively change. Finally, Hu Delin, who was sitting next to Chen Guang, was the first to not be able to hold it in. He signaled to the makeup artist to stop first, then turned to look at Chen Guang and said in a trembling voice, "Mr. Chen, I really don't know how to thank you for your great kindness. Anyway, thank you." For a veteran actor of his age, it was easier said than done to improve his acting skills. Now, just by acting in a play and even receiving 5 times the salary, he could improve his acting skills by leaps and bounds. How could he not be happy? How could he not be grateful from the bottom of his heart? Qin Guang turned his head slightly to look at Hu Delin and smiled indifferently. "Mr. Hu, you're too kind. I'm just doing what I should do." He did not mention what had happened before. At this point, there was no need to continue mentioning it. All of them understood that since he dared to come up with this play, dared not to rehearse, and even dared to read the script 4 hours before going on stage, of course, he had come prepared. As the saying goes, summer insects cannot talk about ice. There was no need for a godlike existence to explain too much to mortals. At this moment he seemed so enigmatic, so steady and so dignified. He was simply awesome. Hu Delin nodded repeatedly. "Understood. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chen." With Hu Delin taking the lead, Yin Fei and the other members of the cast also expressed their gratitude to Qin Guang from afar. There were even some who wanted to refund their salary, but they were all rejected by Qin Guang. After all, he wasn't lacking in money. Seeing how generous Qin Guang was and how he was like a master, the actors who had looked down on him felt extremely ashamed of their inferiority. This was a true powerhouse who could control his own fate in his work and life. Look at his magnanimity. He was indifferent and did not bother about trifles. From time to time, everyone would recall Qin Guang's seemingly casual words in the afternoon. At that time they thought he was treating it as a joke. Only now did they understand that he had a card up his sleeve. There was only one person who could not sit still. As one of the main cast members, she should have been the first to remove her makeup. But at this moment she hid far away in a corner and did not dare to come over, letting others go first. It was none other than Shi Lu, who had made the most noise in the afternoon. Although others had disdained Qin Guang in their hearts, they had at least restrained themselves on the surface. But Shi Lu had openly flipped out. Although she had unwillingly apologized to him after the incident, now that she thought about it, it was not an apology at all. It was clearly adding fuel to the fire. That little trick that she had hidden in her heart, how could she hide it from Master Chen? He must have completely seen through me. I have always blamed him wrongly. Thinking about how I had said so many bad things about him in the past few days, I felt terrible. No wonder he was so conceited. No wonder he said he understood our feelings at that time. In fact, it was because his realm and personality were already at a level beyond our understanding. He was already standing on another level of acting. His realm could not be expressed in words, or even if he could say it, we would not be able to understand or believe it. He did not even bother to explain it to us ordinary people, because he knew that no matter how much he said, it was better to take us to the stage. Not only could he put on a good show himself, but he could even bring all of us into it. He was God. The God of acting. But I had always doubted God's ability. So embarrassing. What should I do now? Should I go up and sincerely apologize to him again and then say thank you to him like Sister Yin Fei did? But why can't my feet move? Shi Lu paced back and forth in the same place, rubbing her hands so hard that a layer of skin almost peeled off. No one was more embarrassed than her at that moment. As a newcomer actress who was determined to achieve something in the performing arts, Shi Lu knew that it was reasonable for her to apologize to Qin Guang. But as a young girl, she could not let go of her pride. "I say, Xiao Lu, why don't you go up and say a few words? Qin Guang is only a little over 20 years old. He is younger than you. Look, he actually doesn't care about you at all." Shi Lu was surprised. "Ah. He's so young. Xianxia nodded and snorted. What else can he do? Don't you know that he hasn't even graduated from university? A few days ago I said in front of you that he would rather attend classes than rehearse. Didn't you hear me? Xilu blushed. At that time I was only thinking about him in my heart and did not pay attention to what you said, Director Yang. Alright, now that the show is over, you may not have a chance to interact with him in the future. You decide whether you want to apologize to him or not. Anyway, I think it is reasonable for you to say something. Xilu was silent. Her mind could not help but recall the scene of her and Qin Guang arguing in the afternoon. Now she finally understood. At that time she thought that Qin Guang did not know what to do, but in fact she was the one who did not know what to do. At that time she felt that he did not care about the play, but in fact he had already seen through everything. When she was making a scene, Qin Guang's expression did not change. It was not that he did not know what to do, but it was because he was looking at her with the mentality of an adult. He was not joking, he really did care about this play. I was so unreasonable at that time, but he did not get angry at me at all. Compared to him, I am as insignificant as a childish urchin. Finally, she mustered up her courage and walked quickly in the direction of the makeup table. What? He left. He did not attend the celebration? Xilu, who had pounced on nothing, stared blankly at the makeup artist who had already removed the makeup for the next person. She felt a little uncomfortable. Did he say anything when he left? Not yet. He did not ask about me. No. Xianxia jumped out from behind. Xilu, perhaps in his heart the matter of you contradicting him is not worth mentioning at all. You should stop worrying about it. How can he do this? I am so sad, how can he not care about it at all? Xianxia coughed lightly. What's so strange about this? Because he is Qin Guang. Sigh. Xilu felt melancholy again. However, although the show on stage was over, the storm on the internet had just begun. Chapter 957. Just as Xianxia had said, Qin Guang didn't take Xilu's matter seriously at all. After removing his makeup, he drove back to school. If it was before, Qin Guang would probably be interested in discussing acting and life with Xilu just because she was pretty. He would then criticize her for judging people based on their looks. But now there was still a pool of mud on his butt that couldn't be wiped clean. Who would be interested in serving this unruly little girl at a glance? He hadn't even figured out her situation yet. If something really happened with his character, Xilu would definitely be in trouble if she got hold of something against him. Initially, Qin Guang had planned to go back to his dorm and have a good night's sleep. The next morning he would pretend that nothing had happened and continue doing what he was supposed to do. However, he couldn't rest after he got back to his dorm. He was forcefully dragged out by Lin Jingwei and the others, saying that they wanted to celebrate for him. It's just a small matter. Is there a need to celebrate it? Qin Guang struggled to get up. Lin Jingwei and Xiong held him down on both sides. Xiong chuckled. You can't just think about yourself. We've been cheering you on so much that our voices are going hoarse. Aren't you going to treat us to a meal to celebrate? Lin Jingwei pulled him back with all his might. Yeah, hurry up. Gaoya and class rep's son should be at the school gate by now. They're going to? What else? Otherwise, we wouldn't have dragged you out in such a hurry. Wouldn't tomorrow's dinner be the same? Qin Guang stood up awkwardly. He didn't want to go out at this time, but it wasn't right to make the girls wait for him. All right. Let's go. It's my treat. Do whatever you want. Oh yeah, it's almost midnight. The school should be closing soon, right? Bai Nyangzi urged. Just close it. Brother Guang, when did you become such a coward? Climb over the wall. Coward your sister. Let's go. On the same day, the god of acting Qin Guang, who had been shining brightly on the stage, turned around and prepared to eat skewers at a barbecue stall outside the school with a few classmates. After eating skewers, they still had to climb over the wall to return to school. Qin Guang was probably the most famous celebrity in history. When the four of them arrived at the school gate, it was almost 12 o'clock. Sun Xiaoxuan and Gaoya were struggling to explain something to the security guards. Sun Xiaoxuan looked back and saw Qin Guang walking towards them. He quickly pulled Qin Guang over and said sneakily, "They won't let us out now. They said they're going to close the school gate. Don't show your face. It won't be good if someone sees you." Qin Guang patted Sun Xiaoxuan's shoulder indifferently. "What are you afraid of? We're just going out for a barbecue. It's not like we can't see the light of day. Hey, don't you can't. What's wrong with that? It's not like we're university classmates going out for a barbecue will make the headlines. If I'm so afraid of doing anything, I won't be able to go out in the future. As he spoke, he strode forward. Gao Yu was still arguing with the security guards. Just let us go out and buy something. We'll be right back. We won't climb over the wall, really. Look at us, two delicate little girls. We don't look like we can climb over the wall. We have a few boys with us, but that's because we're worried that it's not safe for us to go out in the middle of the night. So we asked our classmates to be our bodyguards. Hey, why are you like this? There's still 5 minutes before 12 o'clock. Why can't you let us go out? Isn't the school's rule that we can go out before closing time? You're asking me which school I'm from? What? You want to complain to my school's leader? So what if I tell you? I'm not going to change my name. I'm Wenwen from the Department of International Trade in the School of Finance and Economics. Qin Guang was hiding leisurely and eavesdropping on Gao Ye's argument with the security guards. When he heard the last sentence, he couldn't sit still anymore. Oh my God, you're not going to change your name? How dare you say that? He quickly moved forward and blocked Gao Ye behind him. He smiled at the security guards and said, I'm sorry. We really have something urgent to do outside the school. We have to go out and deal with it. Could you please make an exception? I'm Qin Guang from the School of Construction Loop. This is my classmate, Gao Ye from the School of Construction Loop. She was just talking nonsense. Just ignore her. Before Qin Guang could finish his sentence, the security guard's mouth opened wider and wider. Qin Guang. Qin Guang was speechless. Didn't I just introduce myself? Why do you look like you've just seen a ghost when you just recognized me? The security guard's colleague, who was sitting behind him and looking at his phone, stood up immediately and rushed forward excitedly. Qin Guang. This guy looked like he was looking at something strange. Oh, it's me. We don't have much time. Shall we go out now? Guard A, who had just argued with Gao Ye, nodded. Hey, Mr. Qin, take care. Although we have to close at night, we're on duty all night. Let us know when you come back and we'll open the door for you. Guard B, who was playing with his phone, patted his colleague with a meaningful look. Go. It'll be a miracle if Mr. Qin comes back. Mr. Qin, take care. I hope you have a good time. The hotel above Zhou Xian has a nice environment. It's awesome. Qin Guang rolled his eyes. Awesome my ass. Let's go. He waved his hand and the others followed him out of the door. Even after walking out of the door for a long time, the others were still in a daze. In fact, it was already past 12 o'clock, and they didn't expect to come out so easily. Walking on the road outside the school, Qin Guang laughed. Now you know how awesome I am. I know. You're awesome, my brother. I'm so proud to know you. Gao Ye, who had failed to shift the blame, rolled her eyes and complained. Sun Xiaoxuan, who was holding her hand, covered his mouth and giggled. The others wanted to praise him, but since he was so cocky, they decided not to. Otherwise, he would go to heaven. There were pros and cons to being famous. At times like this, people could use their face cards, and if they knew you, they would show some respect. The fruit of face was super useful, and anyone who used it would know. When they arrived at the Golden Campus Square, most of the barbecue stalls were about to close up. Luckily, the owner of the stall that they frequented had not closed the shutter door yet. The poor owner couldn't just give up on his business, so he ignored his wife and children who were waiting at home and started to work bitterly. However, he was not without benefits. The knowledgeable owner recognized Qin Guang at first glance, and he mustered up the courage to ask for a picture with him. Mr. Qin, can I print this picture and hang it on the wall? The owner's face was red and he was rubbing the skewers with grease on his hands. No one knew if his face was red from nervousness or from the heat of the skewers. Qin Guang stuffed the skewers into his mouth. No problem. Thank you, Mr. Qin. Thank you, Mr. Qin. Today's meal is on me. The owner of the barbecue stall was very excited. He was only a small stall, and he had heard that it was not a problem to ask for a picture with a celebrity. However, if someone wanted to hang the picture in his stall, they would ask for a portrait fee and it would cost hundreds of thousands. He was just trying to say it casually, and he didn't expect a big shot like Qin Guang to agree. He didn't expect Qin Guang to be so generous. Qin Guang laughed. You're too kind, boss. It's not a big deal, but you can't pay for this meal. I told my classmate that it's my treat. Next time, next time. The owner of the barbecue stall didn't have an easy life. He had to wake up early and work late. With Chen Guang's appetite, he could easily eat up 1,000 or so there was no need for him to pay. The owner still wanted to argue, but son Xiaoxuan, who was sitting next to Chen Guang, said, "Boss, you don't have to be so polite with him. His sneeze is enough for us to eat for a year." The owner was touched. "Then Mr. Chen, what title should I write on the picture?" Chen Guang thought for a while. "That's easy. You write, famous linguist, Dota folk god, world's top racer, pencil engraving artist, world arm wrestling champion, world's #1 piano master, world's champion of darts, winner of the I-8A Hero Medal, and world's top performing artist. Chen Guang is here to guide the barbecue." Bai Nyangzi almost spat out his coke onto the plate. "Damn. Boss, this piece of paper is not enough." Xiong gave him a thumbs up. "Do you still want to write, most handsome male god of Jianhuan College?" Lin Jingwei coughed twice. "You remind me of Biao Bro, who is only one character away from your name. Are you going to print so many titles on your business card?" Gao Ye complained. "If you don't do it for us, we won't even know that you have done so many things in the past few months." Sun Xiaoxuan's eyes lit up as he looked at Chen Guang. In the past he liked Chen Guang's stubbornness, his sense of responsibility, and now he liked Chen Guang's talent. He was like a bottomless pit. The closer you got to him, the more you couldn't bear to look away from him, and the more you were attracted to him. In this world, was there anything he couldn't do? Sun Xiaoxuan thought back to when he was watching the live broadcast with the other students in his dorm room today. Those unreserved girls clicked their tongues in amazement. He was actually quite proud of himself. "I, Sun Xiaoxuan, have always been a timid kid. But this time I've got the guts. At the very least, I've gotten ahead of him in class." The performing arts majors on the school forum were screaming and wailing, lamenting that Chen Guang didn't give them a way out. The guys in the foreign languages faculty also looked like they had nothing left to live for. This guy was worse than nothing. Although he hadn't attended any elective classes yet, it was said that the tutor of the 8 minor languages he had chosen had already given him full marks in advance, saying that he didn't have the courage to deduct a mark from him. What was even more outrageous were the girls from the School of Foreign Languages. Although these girls were not arrogant, they were not easy to deal with. Not everyone had a chance to get close to them. They would rather stay single until the end of time than to force themselves to be with someone else. But now what did they say? They actually made a joint post on the school forum. "Chen Guang, your wives are asking you to go back to class in the foreign languages faculty. The moral degeneration of the world is getting worse day by day. People's hearts are not what they used to be, moral degeneration, and there's no bottom line. We understand that you want him to come to class. Frankly speaking, we also want to know why he is so awesome, how his brain works, and whether he has some special learning posture that can make his learning efficiency so high that it makes people's hair stand on end. If he can teach them a thing or two, of course, it's something that everyone dreams of. But isn't it too much for your wives to ask him to come back to class? And the we. Where's the bottom line? Where's your moral integrity? How do you want us, the boys in the foreign languages faculty, to raise our heads in the future?" The corner of the wall was dug up to the ground, and it was even dug up with the Lanxiang excavator. When this group of poor boys went to the girls to ask for justice, they were once again blocked by the girls' words. The original words of the girls were roughly like this: "Don't think about these useless things all day long. Learning skills is more useful than anything else. As long as you can learn a little bit of his martial arts, not to mention being his concubine, it's not impossible for you to be his meat toilet. You guys learn from others, but you don't have much skill, but your mind has a lot of crooked ideas. What do you think we are? Raised by your family?" This group of boys was really angry, but they really couldn't refute, so they could only vent their anger on Chen Guang on the internet. Sun Xiaoxuan didn't care about these inexplicable rivals in love. If he was really that easy to get, I would have to thank the heavens. While everyone was eating skewers, all kinds of articles were posted on the internet. The genius actor who subverts the era, Chen Guang. Playing with tickets to a new realm, where's Chen Guang's limit? An in-depth analysis of Chen Guang's version of Thunderstorm, from the details to see the classic. The limit of the realm, how a person can affect the whole stage with his own strength. From another world on the screen, the real Thunderstorm. News articles with such titles appeared in countless media outlets, and were also reposted by countless self-media outlets, and shared by countless people with their friends and family. What was even more unexpected was that Deng Xiaojiang, who had always stayed out of these entertainment matters, also posted an article on his social media account. He said, looking at Qin Guang's version of Thunderstorm, as a director who once directed Thunderstorm, I feel like I am a toddler learning to walk. After a while he actually posted again, seeing the words is like a face, seeing the shadow is like seeing a person is like seeing a world, recalling Thunderstorm feelings. Big Beard Deng was the first famous director to come out to post, and not long after another famous director Xianxia also posted a long article, Subversion Under Prejudice. Not every great actor comes from the accumulation of classics. Such a young actor, he was born great, only lacks a stage. Not long after, Shi Lu, one of the main creators of Qin Guang's version of Thunderstorm, also posted a long article on her Weibo and Qin Guang. She first publicly apologized to Qin Guang, and then from the perspective of a personal participant, with the tone of an experienced person, she talked about her experience in the whole play, which was reposted and recognized by other main creators of the play. After a while, another main creator of Thunderstorm also stood up. He deeply repented and publicly admitted that the person who had been leaking information to the media for the past few days was actually him. He did not even dare to ask for forgiveness, but he really could not bear the incomparable pain in his heart, so he chose to be open and honest. How long does a young actor need to prove his acting skills? Perhaps it was a classic movie, or perhaps it was a heavyweight incredible award, or perhaps it was a popular TV series that was praised by everyone. But no one had ever thought that there would be such a person on stage for the first time. With just one play, 3.5 hours, he was able to turn the tide of public opinion that was ridiculing him, slandering him and ridiculing him into worship in an instant. But Qin Guang did it effortlessly. He even started to figure out the script 4 hours before he went on stage. But his success not only did not let people see the art of acting clearly, but it also made people worship this art from the bottom of their hearts. But this was the biggest advantage of Qin Guang. No matter how much trouble there was outside, he was still himself. Countless people's gazes were focused on him, and countless people were cheering and jumping for his subversive performance, feeling that he was a celestial being. He was walking out of the barbecue stall with a few of his classmates. Stepping under the moonlight outside of Wujing University, he was joking with Lin Jingwei and the others from time to time. Otherwise, he would use his broken gong-like voice to sing loudly. He was changing himself every moment, and he was also affecting the world, but in a sense he had never changed. He had the calmest heart, never moved by external things. Chapter 958. Are we really going to wake up the two guards? Standing under the school wall, Gaoya looked at her watch. It's already past 2 in the morning. I'm a little embarrassed. Bai Fan climbed up the wall like a monkey. It's not worth it. We've climbed this wall hundreds of times. I can do it even with my eyes closed. He smiled proudly and jumped down. Whoosh. He was so pleased with himself that his clothes got caught on the sharp awl of the fence. He looked like a piece of cured meat waiting to be dried in the winter. F***ck. My clothes. Bai Fan screamed in a low voice. Qin Guang and the others were overjoyed. You should thank the heavens. You should be thankful that I didn't strip you naked. Qin Guang picked up a branch from the ground and poked Bai Fan's butt. Brother Guang, don't mess around. I'm panicking. I'm trying to poke you down. Bear 2 roared without any sense of propriety. Let me do it. Then out of nowhere he took out a big stick as thick as a calf and poked it at Lady White's buttocks. The white snake screamed. Bramble, it broke free from the sharp awl and fell down with its legs between its legs. Fortunately, although it was small, it was agile and landed on the ground with its legs between its legs like a gymnast. Full marks. The others were startled by Nyangzi and Xiong'er's actions. They looked left and right to make sure no one was around before they calmed down. Some things were really strange. No matter how high one's status in the underworld was, they would still feel uneasy when they were doing something sneaky like climbing over a wall. Gaoya whispered, "Stop howling. What if someone saw you? Wouldn't it be embarrassing? Bai Fan, you're such a noob." As she spoke, she grabbed the railing with both hands and flipped over in no time, landing beautifully on the ground. Only Lin Jingwei, who had raised his palms to support her bottom, was left staring at the air. He was most afraid of the air suddenly becoming quiet. Qin Guang patted his shoulder sympathetically. This was the only disadvantage of having a tough girlfriend. He wanted to take advantage of her, but he didn't even have the chance to take advantage of her. Next, Xiong'er and Lin Jingwei flipped over one after the other, leaving Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan outside. A few people inside turned around and Gaoya urged, "Hurry up, we still have to attend the second professional class tomorrow morning." Sun Xiaoxuan nervously glanced at the big hole in Bai Nyangzi's clothes and said in a low voice, I'm a little scared." Gaoya rolled her eyes. "Don't bother if you're afraid. Didn't the security guard say that the hotel above Xianxia is quite good?" Lin Jingwei nodded. "Yeah, that's right, especially the love room. It's awesome." Gaoya smacked him on the forehead. "Who asked you to tell me? Tell me. No one will think you're mute if you don't talk. No matter how awesome you are. How awesome are you?" Sun Xiaoxuan blushed and Qin Guang rolled his eyes. He turned around to look at Sun Xiaoxuan, intending to help Lin Jingwei out of the situation. However, Qin Guang never expected that his heart would thump when he looked at Sun Tao's face. Although class monitor Sun's face was red, his eyes were glowing. He didn't know why, but he was a little flustered and felt sorry for her. "Forget it, I'll give in first. I'm not in the mood for that right now." Sun Xiaoxuan saw that Qin Guang was looking at her with a thoughtful look on his face, and thought that he was really considering taking her to do something at this time. She wanted to be reserved, but when the words came out of her mouth she said, I really don't dare to flip. My clothes are looser than Bai Fan's. It would be troublesome if they got caught." Hearing those words, Qin Guang was shocked. Since when did class monitor Sun become so bold? She was obviously implying something. He couldn't let her continue, so Qin Guang decided to send her over. He coughed lightly and said, "It's just a small case. Do you want to see the power of a martial arts master?" As he said this, he put his arm around Sun Xiaoxuan's waist. According to his plan, he would be able to take her from one side of the fence to the other side in a whoosh, just like in the movies. Unexpectedly, Sun Xiaoxuan's body softened when he put his arm around her waist. Her face turned even redder and she subconsciously put her arms around his waist. Almost half of her body was pressed against his. "There are a lot of people here. Don't say that. I'm embarrassed." Qin Guang, who was about to take a breath, almost lost his breath. "What are you thinking?" Sun Xiaoxuan looked back at him. Although her face was red, she still plucked up the courage to ask, I know you are very powerful, but it doesn't matter. I can do it." Her voice was getting lower and lower, almost like the buzz of a mosquito. If it weren't for Qin Guang's sharp ears, he wouldn't have been able to hear her clearly. The people behind the fence had already turned around and were about to leave. Gaoya giggled, Go, really go. We will definitely keep this a secret for you. Girls can't be kept at home when they grow up." Qin Guang finally came to his senses. "I'm not talking about how powerful you are. I'm not talking about how powerful you think I am, okay? You're quite open-minded. What are you thinking about? That's what I'm talking about." He couldn't delay any longer. Otherwise, the situation would get out of control. Qin Guang tightened his grip on Sun Xiaoxuan's waist. He hugged her tightly and his feet bounced off the ground. Lin Jingwei, Gaoya, Bai Fan and Xiong Jinka had just turned around and were about to continue teasing them. Qin Guang held Sun Xiaoxuan with one hand and lifted her up into the air like a rocket. The two of them rose until they were about 3 meters above the ground before they stopped their upward momentum. Just as they passed over the railing, they gently landed on the ground inside. Half of Sun Xiaoxuan's body was still hanging on Qin Guang. She blinked her eyes, not understanding what was going on. The others were also dumbfounded. The slow-witted Sun Xiaoxuan finally opened his mouth and screamed. Fortunately, Qin Guang moved quickly and covered her mouth. "Don't scream. It's not a big deal. This is Qinggong. It's Qinggong. It's like what you see in TV shows every day." After a long while, he finally calmed Sun Xiaoxuan down. The others had already rushed back and looked at him as if he was a monster. "My brother, you're amazing. Where did you learn it?" The white lady was startled and flustered. Xiong rushed up and kneeled on the ground. "Bai teacher, please accept my disciple's bow." Lin Jingwei already knew about his skills. In order to cooperate with the others, he could only pretend to be shocked. However, with the precedent of Xianxia instantly acknowledging a master in front of him, Lin Jingwei was actually somewhat moved. However, he knew more than ordinary people. He understood that wanting to learn inner strength at his age was practically a pipe dream. In the end, he endured and didn't embarrass himself. Gaoye squinted her eyes and moved closer. You've accidentally let something slip again. Qinguang, just how big a secret are you hiding? Tell the truth and you'll be lenient. Resist. Sun Xiaoxuan had been released by Qinguang. He turned back and looked at Qinguang expectantly. She had wanted to ask Gaoye the same question, but she was too embarrassed to ask. Flicking his newly grown hair, Qinguang continued, It looks like I have no choice but to admit it now. What? Everyone looked at him eagerly, feeling that what he was about to say next might be a big secret. Actually, Qinguang purposely dragged out his voice. Everyone's eyes widened and their breathing quickened. They were all focused, afraid to miss a word. Actually, I'm from planet Namek. I'm a prince. *CKoff. Go away. Fine, I was just talking nonsense. What I'm about to say is the truth. I advise you not to seek your own death. Have you guys seen Frozen Hero? Actually, I'm Zhang Wuji, the leader of the Ming cult who has been frozen for 1,000 years. After I woke up, I went to university to reintegrate into modern society. Kill him. Let's beat this scumbag to death. While they were fooling around, the patrolling campus police finally noticed the commotion. They walked over with their flashlights, yelling as they walked, What are you doing? Which school are you from? Seeing this, the crowd cried out in alarm. Qinguang carried Sun Xiaoxuan on his back and took the lead in running. The others also shrank back, not bothering to ask about Qinguang's background. They ran after him. The campus police pretended to chase them for a while but eventually gave up. He could tell from afar that these people were students, so there was no need to chase them. The campus police sometimes looked fierce, but in fact they usually didn't really want to do anything to these naughty students. After a while, Sun Xiaoxuan and Gaoye were sent back to the girls' dormitory, while Qinguang and the other three returned to the boys' dormitory. On the way back, Lin Jingwei teased, Brother Guang, you're really something. How could you let go of class rep Sun with such a good opportunity? Qinguang turned his head to look at him and whispered, I'm not good enough for her. Lin Jingwei was stunned. Huh? What do you mean? Shrugging his shoulders, Qinguang pointed at his left chest and continued, You understand me. There are some things that I like to flaunt, but there are also some things that I can't bring up. I'm a complicated person. Truth be told, I've already tried my best to restrain myself, but I would always encounter unexpected situations. After returning to the dormitory, Xiong brought up the matter of becoming Qinguang's disciple, but Qinguang quickly dismissed the idea. In fact, he could have given Bramble a custom-made training in the world within a cup, just like how he had trained Xuelin. However, as a well-trained elite, Xuelin's survival rate was only 37%. Xiong looked tall and strong, but he was just an ordinary person after all. His willpower couldn't be compared to Xuelin's. If he was sent to the training, his survival rate would be less than 10%. As for letting people like Xiong Bainyangzi and Lin Jingwei build the foundation from scratch, Qinguang felt that it was better to save it. Even though he was talented, he still relied on the Holy Grail to make a comeback. Otherwise, even with Wenwen's endless supply of herbs, he wouldn't be able to get a blister for at least a decade or two. Back then, when Wenwen imparted the painting scroll to him, didn't she also know that he wouldn't be able to get any results without years of hard work, so she planned to use this technique to kill him? Of course, Qinguang had also mastered some techniques in the Zhenwu continent, such as the Virgin Boy Divine technique. However, even if it was the Virgin Boy Divine technique, one had to have a basic physical body before they could start cultivating it. These young lads were a little old and it was too late to start building the foundation now. Of course, Qinguang wasn't in a hurry. The heavenly Holy Grail was only at the one-line sky level. When it was upgraded to the three-line cloud sky, there might be a way to be safe. If he really had the chance, the philanthropic Qinguang said that he would have all his relatives, friends. As long as he was on good terms with them, he would have them all. So this was how he comforted Xiong'er. He caressed Xiong'er's head and said earnestly, Young lad, don't be anxious. Who are you? How can I forget you when I become rich? It's just that now isn't the right time. When I become invincible in the universe and punch through the path of life and death, I will definitely bring you guys to show off and fly, okay? Xiong'er's eyes lit up. Lin Jingwei and Bai Nyangzi also leaned over. The three of them asked in unison, "Really?" Qin Guang nodded. Of course. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. Little chick, little dog, and little bear, although you're a little heavy, you won't be able to run away if I bring you guys to heaven. Get lost. After a night of chatting, the other three finally couldn't open their eyes. Only then did Qin Guang sleep peacefully. When he woke up early in the morning, it was another beautiful day. This morning the other three didn't have any classes. They weren't as diligent as Gao Ya and Sun Xiaoxuan, choosing a second major. Qin Guang counted on his fingers. He had 2 foreign language classes. Looking at the three who were still snoring like thunder, Qin Guang could only curse them with envy and hate. I wish you guys a long sleep. It was already late autumn and the morning air was thick with coldness. Although Qin Guang's body had been trained to be impervious to fire and water, as the saying goes, it's a good cold autumn. Getting up early is not as good as a dog. The laziness in his bones always seemed especially overbearing every cold morning. Although he had already woken up, he first opened his eyes, then closed them. When he opened his eyes again, 10 minutes had already been stolen. He turned his head to look at the newly bought Popcorn Pro 6 Plus beside his pillow. There were only 15 minutes left until the first class. He was like a tightly wound frog jumping up and down. 3 minutes to wash up, 1 minute to go downstairs. From the time he got up to the time he trotted on the long bridge while eating a bun, it took him less than 8 minutes to get to the first building. That's Qin Guang. A girl on the long bridge recognized him and exclaimed. The girl's exclamation caused more people to focus their attention on this handsome man who was as beautiful as the wind. The thought of asking Qin Guang for an autograph came to many people's minds. However, when they saw Qin Guang, who was trotting happily while eating a bun without any astrology, the idea of asking for an autograph instantly collapsed. Strange, I might have seen a fake celebrity. How is he a celebrity? He's no different from us when we're about to be late for class. As his fans, it's so embarrassing. Are we really going to ask him for an autograph? While these people were hesitating, Qin Guang had already run across the long bridge. They should feel lucky that they hadn't seen the most shocking scene. If they recognized that the mobile phone Qin Guang was using was the latest popcorn model that had been nicknamed 3P6P, they would be even more embarrassed. The popcorn mobile phone was about to go out of business, and the only spokesperson was Fudikang's Zhongquan Egg. Its annual sales were less than that of other companies in a week, but Qin Guang actually knew how to use it. Do you have any self-awareness as a celebrity? You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.